order the meeting Monday, June 5th, 2023. Mr. Chansky, you want to call the roll?
Jensen.
Present.
Maroney.
Present.
Scott. And Zierden.
Present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do I have an approval or amendment of the agenda for tonight?
So moved. Second.
Any other discussion?
I would like a point of clarification, and I forget what month it was, in light of the fact that there's been, as we all know, a lot of goings on with the expansion of the disc golf course, but recognizing it's on the agenda tonight, I know the council took action to refer this in 1 month to Park and Rec, and then there was also, if I'm correct, a recommendation, a decision actually, to forward it to Planning and Zoning as well.
To forward the Park and Rec's recommendation of planning and zoning.
The rezoning of those parcels for the parking lot.
So that is currently before the planning commission, correct?
Right.
So they
from
discussed
that-
it and conducted the public hearing in May and then tabled the, for
Further consideration.
further discussion.
Yeah, so point I'm getting at is, I guess I was under the impression that once it went in front of Park and Rec and Planning and Zoning, it was coming back to the council. So I wasn't anticipating this coming back until, well, given the fact that Planning and Zoning didn't take any action at their May meeting, and will at June, presumably, that it wouldn't be coming back to the council until July. So I'm just, I guess, looking to establish some understanding or go back to what it was that the council was in part conveying to the public.
So the motion that the council made in April was to direct the the Park and Recreation Committee to conduct public comment on other uses and direct staff to meet with any property owners, adjacent property owners that want to come in and meet to discuss potential alternatives. It did not include the rezoning piece.
So the rezoning was a result of the city staff having applied to the Planning Commission for rezoning.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are going to get right to it with discussing the completion of the disc golf course.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
Item number 5 is actually open forum. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. If there's anyone who wants to speak tonight about something not on the agenda, you can please come forward. Anyone? Okay.
Bill Toth, Green Scene, Breezy Point. Excuse me. I'm on the Park and Rec Committee, and we are asked to make recommendations to the council on the areas that we are in charge of, or so that you folks can make good decisions. And in most cases, we don't know have any idea what the costs are of what we're recommending. I went through 4 textbooks from my college days at the Carlson School of Management, and there is not one entry that states you should put costs or expenses for specific programs lump them into the general ledger account. They should be specifically for that particular activity. In fact, in the CEP, which is a website for certified public accountants to get certified and to continue their education, it states that government accounting, we should be using some form of government accounting here. It has different standards, but again, according to that website, according to the Government Account Standards Board, a government entity needs to be more closely monitor its resource usage so as not to overspend. And I think we need to adopt a more, at least I'm going to push this in the Park and Rec Committee, but I think you folks would be good to adopt that kind of stance also, so we get a handle on what we're spending our taxpayers' money. My property taxes have gone up 115% in the last 8.5 years, and I've talked to probably 200 residents here in this city. They've gone up more, a lot of them have gone up more than mine. I've talked to Mr. Zerden about this, and I know he was against this, and I understand his reasoning. I didn't actually disagree with him, and I probably wouldn't have been up here speaking about this right now, but a couple of our committee members wanted increase in the budget for Park and Rec, and I think that is outrageous when we don't know what the costs are for the areas that we follow. So I hope you would take a look at this at some time, and I will be pushing to get this on the agenda at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, open forum is now closed. We will move on to the disc golf course expansion. I am going to start quick. I just want to give a little recap from my perspective of what kind of has happened in the last 6 months. January, we all came into this not thinking that this was going to be what we were discussing for the first 6 months. And we had a 3-hour council meeting in January, a 5-hour council meeting in February. You know, one of the biggest things and why I had taken the time limit off was to give people the opportunity to speak, because that was the feedback that we had been given. And so that was the opportunity. And in April, we did put a pause on the expansion. And I would say that we took the last 6 months and we did do our due diligence. We did listen. It didn't fall on deaf ears. There were a lot of things that came up that, you know, we had to take into consideration, but a lot of things that we found that we're going to change and we're going to make improvements, and that's what we really, really want to focus on, is making those improvements. There's a lot of things that happened that we can't fix 100%. We can't change what happened. And one of the other things is people wanted that public notice, so we did push it back to Parks and Recs. We sent out 40 mailers to the people that were surrounded the disc golf course. We advertised it every Wednesday for 4 weeks. We had roughly 20 people that came, 12 people that spoke, and half were for it, half were against it. So even with that kind of notice, we really didn't see the kind of participation that we would have wanted to see. Not only that, but you know, we did ask that property owners, we found the same number, the same 40, for property owners to come in and talk to the city and work with the city and get changes to their specific properties, because we felt like that was important. And we only had 4. We had 4 people come in. And so now here we sit 6 months later. We've tried to do everything that the public has asked us to do. And now we have to discuss tonight on what we think is the best way to move forward. So I am looking forward to hearing what everyone else on this council has to say, but I do appreciate everyone that has taken the time to come up to this podium. It takes a lot of courage, I would say, too, and I think it's really important that you continue to do so as we move forward. So I'll go ahead and open it up.
Well, I don't know about anyone else, but you got to find the letter that we have in front of us tonight a little concerning. And, you know, frankly, almost calling the question yet to this point about what has the council done to truly listen and take action on the concerns that the public is voicing. So I don't know that we've done what we can do, need to do, or should do as a council. This idea that we can't fix or correct where things are at or what's been done up to this point, that's nothing more than a myth.
We can't change what happened, is what I'm saying. We can't go back in time. So what do you think we haven't done in the last 6 months? What do you think we haven't done in the last 6 months besides?
Well, I would sum it up this way. if you were at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, or if you watched the meeting, there were a number of residents there, and in particular, a couple that hit on no fewer than 6 issues, 6 points of where this city didn't follow our own ordinance requirements, or if not that, certainly best practices when it comes to how you undertake development of property in this manner. And to me, the effect of saying, we've tried, we've done this, we've given it a good effort, but it is what it is essentially telling people that continue to express concerns,
I'm asking
we're
you,
not hearing you.
what specifically do you think we could have done in the last 6 months that we didn't do?
Well, to me, I would have started by clearly and specifically identifying every single concern and issue that people have and otherwise exists with every bit of the process involved with the expansion.
How did we
I would
not
have probably
do that?
done that in a workshop where everyone could have had advanced, ample notice, come and fully participated. That to me would have been a starting point. Just simply recognizing, you know what? We have to reset every bit of where things are at and what's taken place. Because I don't know about others, but I will tell you, and I think I can speak from a level of credibility and having prior experience in city administration. When I hear of a council having deferred their authority in approving expenses to the administrator at the time to go off and freely, without limit, purchase property with taxpayer dollars for the parking lot, I don't know how the council can do that.
I will say in closed session, we put a cap on that. We did not give them an open checkbook. We set our limits. So we did have that.
In a closed session?
That was a closed session because we were going through negotiations. We didn't want to publicize where our cap was in fear of somebody else outbidding that number.
You know, regardless, I think that there's more that can be done, needs to be done. This is a matter of making sure that as elected officials, we have the trust of as much of the public as is possible. We fully realize, I think, we're never going to have complete trust with everyone, foregone conclusion. But when you continue to have the number of people showing up, speaking out, voicing concerns, raising legitimate procedural questions like it's been the case, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm not going to be a part of any action or decision that simply says, we're beyond that now, we're moving forward. That does not work for me. That is not the basis by which I ran for office. That is not transparency, it's not public engagement. It's just not how you govern, in my experience.
One of the concerns, excuse me, that I have is the letter that was forwarded to us today, and I think the city attorney should address that. Because before I want to proceed, I want to know, you know, where the city stands on this, the reasoning. The lots, the clear cutting of the lots, that's another issue I want the city attorney to provide clarification on. I understand the piece about the cup. That's why he was engaged, because the city planner and David had questions they couldn't answer, and I don't have a problem with that. But the problem I have is we still didn't address that there was a city ordinance against clear cutting. I believe you had to leave 25%. So I just want to know, is that confusing? Is it you know, because of the cup, you know, just, I want to know.
Go ahead.
Mayor, Council, first the letter here, the letter, by the way, is from an attorney representing a new nonprofit organization called Breezy Point Neighborhood Alliance. In the letter, the assertion is that Outlot A is going to be rezoned, which is not accurate. My understanding is Outlot A is already zoned public. What is being rezoned is lots 3, 4, and 5. So it's not a factually accurate letter, but really what it gets down to at the end there is this discussion about the record appears to lack a number of due diligence items, and the residents have been allowed to speak in the issues, but the city has failed to meaningfully give a voice to those residents. The only public hearing required in this whole process is to rezone the property, and that's lots 3, 4, and 5. That public hearing, as I understand it, took place before the Planning Commission 2.5 weeks ago. Legally, that's the only one that's required. That's it, and that did occur. So all these meetings and discussions that the mayor talked about, these long hours and so forth, the council meetings and all that, that's an addition. So can a city council continue to do this and have these discussions? Sure. Is it legally required? No, none of that's required. You own property. As I understand it, it's going to be zoned public for park purposes. That's appropriate. And then if the disc golf course expansion goes through, it'll be utilized for a public purpose. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The city has not violated anything in that process of doing that. The clear cutting business, the problem in your ordinance is that it's not clear as to when clear cutting is required. My understanding, though, is that when people are developing properties, they never require a conditional use permit for that. It's never been the case. So the city isn't doing anything that's inconsistent with past practice. It's also odd, frankly, for a city to ever issue itself a conditional use permit. That's unusual. Can that ordinance be clarified? Sure, we can work on doing that. But any allegation that ordinance was violated, I don't see it. I don't see it. From where I'm sitting, what you've done so far is you've more than covered what needs to be covered in terms of public engagement. Again, you can do as much as you want, but all that was required was the rezoning, and that happened 3 weeks ago. Everything else was in addition to that. So I don't see any issue raised by this letter, to be honest with you. I don't see any exposure for you. If the city wants to move ahead with the golf course expansion, I'll let the Planning Commission finish its job and then have that recommendation come before the City Council, then that's fine. I think you're in a fine place.
The reason for the question was I met with the city planner the morning of, the May council meeting, and he told me there was clearly the ordinance stated that you can't clear cut residents, aren't allowed to do that. And I was trying to do the homework because of what happened, and I did ask him what would happen if a resident clear cut a lot and didn't get any permission, talked to the city, and he said, well, it could be approved after the fact. And I did ask if there would be any consequences, enforcement by the city, and he did not answer that question. So that's the reason, I headed down the path that I did, because of the conversation with the city planner.
And to my understanding, we've never actually, anyone who has built on a property, if they have clear cut their lot, or we've never actually looked at a lot and said, this percentage was clear cut, and we've never done that,
Yeah, so
correct?
two things, yes, Madam Mayor. So first, your first question, that is correct. We've never issued a CUP as part of the development of a parcel, which is what the attorney was referring to. And then to our knowledge, we've never issued a CUP for any kind of vegetation removal, as the ordinance describes it, in any situation. How the ordinance also describes it, there actually is 3 different definitions. There's clear cutting, open cutting, and select cutting. It defines clear cutting as the removal of more than 75 and up to 100% of stand trees and brush over 10 feet in height on a lot or parcel on the land of up to 40 acres. Vegetation, the open cutting is more than 25 and up to 75, And then select cutting is removal of dead, diseased, or damaged trees or shrubs, removal of trees for placement of structures and drives, and further removal of only individual trees to uniformly thin up to 25% of stand on a lot of up to 40 acres. Complete brush removal is allowable, including trees up to 10 feet in height. So, as one also said, that's the three definitions the ordinance gives for vegetation removal.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Ball, do you have anything?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
I kind of said my piece in April, so I'll probably just reiterate that with some modifications this time, and based on the recommendation of the Parks and Rec, but go ahead.
Okay. I've had the opportunity being part of the Park and Rec Board that actually brought the disc golf course back into light back in 2013. I then was appointed to City Council in 2014 and have been serving since. I've sat up here with 4 different councils, all of them discussing it, approving it, moving forward with it. We've had different members of Parks and Rec Committee members looking at this, approving it, making it further in the capital improvement plans. Back when it was first constructed, we hired a designer to come in, which, don't hold me to it, but I believe the cost was about $10,000 that we expense for design. The first 9 was a huge success, and so when we did the second 9, which was in 2017, 2018, our Public Works decided to take that on themselves. We figured we could save taxpayer money, we wouldn't have to hire a designer. For the most part, it was making it enjoyable, finding a target, finding a T-pad, and getting it done. That was open in 2017, like I say, 2018. In January 2019, even phase 2 was started to look at the additional 18 holes. When this all started, we acknowledged that parcel existed and wanted to develop it. At one point, it was talked about potentially 3 18-disc holes. That has changed. At the time that it was started, it was discussed about having a park and a pavilion at that location, a central place that any community members can come to. Realizing it was a 5 to 15-year goal, it was nothing to be done immediately. The cheapest thing was to just put the T-pads in and baskets and move on and see how well it succeeded. And we saw a lot of success. A lot of community people came out and enjoyed it. I was actually there over Memorial Day weekend. You couldn't park in the parking lot. You had to park on the street to be able to go play. During that time, we never had any issues. The process that we went through never was questioned, never was complained about. To my knowledge, nobody ever came to the council asking for anything. I believe there was one person that when the development started that came in and worked with staff and they worked it out. The council was never made aware of that, such a deal. Again, going back to when the first 18, nothing was brought up. But since then, since March of 2022, when logging first started occurring, the city has heard and seen emails with statements of claims that they were promised that the land would never be developed. We learned that that was from realtors and nobody from the likes of the city. Subsequent statements continue to ask about process in which the expansion was made, concerns risen for financials, security, safety, and traffic. These are valid questions and concerns, but again, never was brought up during the original 9 or the next 9, and has not been an issue ever since the course has been put into place since 2015. There have been statements of lack of transparency, but record shows that we've had 4 different councils being brought up. It's been in front of the Parks and Rec, it's been publicized about. It's there. While it wasn't a direct mailer saying this is happening, it was there. But speaking of direct mailers, a unknown person, I don't know who did it, sent out a postcard April of 2022, the end of April, with a direct call to action to stop said development. All factual statements, what the budgeted amount was, where the parking lot was going to be, what the course was entailing, all for a call for action for residents to contact city, council members to stop such a program. Zero contact was made. And that ranged from everywhere. City Hall received one, I received one. I know multiple people in the White Birch 1516 area got it. I don't know how many were sent out. I don't know who sent it out, but it was there. The complaints that we have received on the original 18 is that of on-street parking during tournaments. And when we developed the addition, we tried to accommodate, to alleviate the on-street parking issues. And so that is why such a large parking lot. During normal play, that's not going to be the issue. But that's why it was developed that way. I have walked the development a number of times now, and in reviewing the notes of working with residents, with city staff, taking in also considerations to items that were presented to Parks and Rec, I'm prepared to make a motion tonight. I'm not going to start my motion right now, but I want to read the statements that I want to talk about because I want to ask if we should make it as one motion or as separate motions. So if I could, I'd like to state what I'm prepared to move forward with.
May I just interject?
Please.
Though, before you make a motion, I have additional questions for Administrator Chansky. So,
Yeah, I won't make that motion right now. I'm just going to read my statements if I could. Is that okay with you?
yeah, no, that's
Okay.
fine.
So this is what I concluded. As it was determined by Parks and Rec Committee that the better use of the public land, after advertising and asking and hearing ideas from citizens, the disc golf expansion would continue as planned, as staff time allows. I would ask that hole number 5 be realigned to the west, and that the pin and target 5 to not be placed until realignment can occur when staff time allows. I'd also like to place a maximum of 5 PDGA tournaments per year. This would also accompany a special event permit that staff would need to prepare still. I'd like to finish the parking lot, including a buffer to be grown in from the street view, as well as reducing the size to create additional side buffer as staff time allows. I will preface real quick that the rezoning has not been approved with that. That is fully acknowledged. A parking lot is not needed. On-street parking is used in other public entities, such as the public park over on Breezy Point Boulevard. We have our fishing pier, and we also have our public beach. All do not have any public parking. And then also with statements heard and seen in front of the Parks and Rec, as well as achieving the initial concept that I mentioned about the 5 to 15-year plan, I'm asking also that the council work on increasing the parks budget to accommodate placement of a park and a pavilion to utilize the space that is either known for the actual disc golf course and or the parking lot that's there today, but to reutilize space properly to develop a park and pavilion by increasing our budget. I would ask that Parks and Rec start looking at park designs and placements to be installed in the next 2 to 4 years, which also means that we would have to look at increasing that budget to accommodate such. That's what I'm prepared to make, but I know, Mr. Jensen, you had questions, and we're still discussing.
David, I wonder if you would be willing to share your thought process on just realigning why you made the decision to realign just hole 5, and not do a redesign and remove other holes.
So when I walked the disc golf course myself, hole 5, it does, unlike all the other holes, hole 5 does seem to have an extreme point. I know when that hole was designed and cleared again, the house that is there now was not there at that time, so they didn't necessarily realize how, I don't think it was intentionally to point that there. So when I looked at the other ones, kind of, I think follow a general curvature or the topography of the land, while hole 5 is kind of very pointed. And looking at the land too, and looking at, okay, how is it even feasible to shift that one? I felt like it could be shifted. Some of the other holes further to the north, if you walk out there, they already start to intersect, and so I'm not quite sure how you would realign those as it is out there. And then just other topography takes, looking at the hills and the valleys in there. Hole 5 seemed like an easy one. Again, it's already kind of a downward facing hole. So if you just kind of shift it, as Mr. Moreno I think it is the west, shifted it, or the left, the west, whatever that would be, You kind of line it further away from those property lines. It's on the top of a hill. We could easily put some kind of natural buffer to kind of indicate that, you know, this is no longer the path. Let it go. Let nature take its course. Grass and such will grow back. So that's kind of why I went with hole number 5 and not anyone else, because I felt like that was the easiest one you could do pretty simply. It's gonna require more vegetation clearing, but it's doable.
Okay, thank you. My only other thoughts, I mean, I personally support 9 holes and 9 holes only. That would give 27 holes of contiguous disc golf. I think the Curtins, the Wallings, the Olsons, and Toffs, those holes should be removed. I'm in agreement with Michael on the parking lot. I mean, it was built for tournaments, and tournaments only due to the size. It can go, you know, having the buffers. It's become quite apparent in this, you know, process. The city has never dedicated any resources really to parks. For whatever reason, Parks and Recs has done the best that they can without any budget. And when we look to the future, I think it's going to require an outside consultant to help the city. Here's the land. What do we do with it with resident input? And, you know, Michael's idea of, you know, a pavilion and a, you know, park or whatever playground. But again, it's what the residents want, you know, with input. You have the original disc golf course parking lot that doesn't need to be there if it's, you know, everything is accessed off of the main parking lot. And there's another piece of property. Does it go to the green space? You know, I don't know the answer to that. That would have to go to Parks and Recs. And as Michael stated, you know, all of this has a cost, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I think there should be some time frames, you know, for the city to look at, you know, some alternate uses of that. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. As far as tournaments, I don't think there should be any tournaments this year. I think until the Parks and Recs comes out with the rules that are fully in place, with the state legislation legalizing marijuana, I think us as a council, we have to have a discussion. And that's kind of where I'm at. And the permitting process, it's my understanding that the city, there's always liability to the city with parks. But when you let them, when groups host tournaments, they're without a permit, the city can be liable. And that's basically it.
Anyone else?
So with the idea of providing a special event permit, where is it in our existing ordinances that allows us or authorizes the city to issue a permit?
This is from talks I've had with Administrator Chansky on the permitting process, Brad.
As in creating a special event permit, you're the legislative body, so you can create it. You can always change your ordinance to create a special event permit, require a permit to do certain things.
So there again, we're going to take action and move forward with doing something that we don't have a specific policy or guidelines currently in place around. I mean, is that what it comes down to? And it's just, again, I mean, I'm sorry, one more reason why, if we want to see the public distrust increase exponentially, let's continue to handle and base decisions on every bit of reasoning like that, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, we've got the cart and the horse completely confused here in terms of what's happened. I mean, it's been acknowledged more than once. Public was not informed. The very residents that have this property abutting up to their property were only made aware of what was taking place when trees started going down. I mean, the list goes on and on, in my mind, of the potential risks and landmines in moving this forward, as opposed to the hard stop and the reset, and let's begin a process that actually is commonsensical and people can understand. This city may not have a history of issuing a CUP for clear cutting activities, but I can tell you it has a history of issuing CUPs for other land use development that the city has taken on. And I'm pretty sure one of the issues that's been raised at planning and zoning is that the city essentially failed to make any application for the development of this land when we require it for every other individual and entity in the community. So are we essentially saying that that doesn't apply to us? I mean, I think that that's clearly the case if this moves forward and gets approved. And I just think it's poor leadership and bad public policy. I don't hear people saying that they're opposed to the existence of the disc golf course as expanded from the original. I think what people are saying is they were not involved. You know, there was never any opportunity for engagement, for conversation. It really goes back to the fact that there's no plan. You know, a city to undertake a development of 30 acres, regardless of what the use is, and not have a plan? I mean, what organization would do that? Just launch into something without knowing who's doing what? Where are the holes going? I mean, we don't even have a surveyed site plan. And yet, we're sticking our flag in the ground saying, all of this makes sense. All of this is okay because we've got a deeded outlot granted to the public, and now we're going to come in and develop essentially a park in an outlot, when I think, as the letter that is in front of us tonight points out, I would really question whether or not that is what was intended by the developer of White Birch 16 in that outlot. More often than not, in that case, it is for issues of easement and access and truly public-orientated needs, not for a defined specific development of a park, or in this case, you know, an expanded disc golf course. Yeah, I guess there's so much more that I could say, and I find particularly troubling with things. But I find myself a little unprepared in the fact that we get council agenda and information late on a Friday afternoon. Our meetings are Monday night, and we're expected to get up to speed and have opportunity to seek clarification. When stands to reason, we all have stuff going on over the weekends and throughout any given week. So I don't know that I can sit here one way or another in good faith and say, I think the council is prepared and it makes sense to make a decision. I'm going to renew my request from a couple of meetings ago. What is the public purpose here? As elected officials, it's being served. What is the public purpose? I have a hard time coming up with it. How is this truly benefiting? How are the majority of taxpayers in this city going to benefit? I mean, any one of us as elected officials ought to be able to answer that. That was part of our
Outdoor
newly
recreation.
elected officials training.
Sorry, are you looking for an answer? Outdoor recreation, exercise.
How is that going to financially improve
Wait,
or
are we,
better?
just real quick, are we talking about parks financially betterment?
We're talking about a public purpose getting to the economic benefit of the majority of a community, as I recall it being defined in the newly elected officials training. How is taking disc golf to an entirely different level beyond the original 18 really getting to serve an economic public purpose for the taxpayers of Breeze Point. We've had information presented, numbers have been put out there in terms of the income this is going to generate, and the amount of money that's going to be spent in lodging. All of that is anecdotal.
I don't think that's the point of Parks and Recs, because then why would anyone put a playground? Why would anyone put a baseball field? Why would anyone put a splash pad? Why would anyone put a community garden? If you looked at everything on the basis of financial return, I don't think that we would have a public purpose then. That wouldn't be the public purpose, because most people want to have recreation so they can enjoy being outdoors, so they can go walk, so they can go do whatever it is that they would like to do outside. That's part of a community. Not everything has to be rooted in the financial aspect of it, and I honestly don't feel like that is the purpose of Parks and Rec. Does it help offset some of the costs when we can get grant funding or charge for pickleball or whatever the case is? Of course it does. But I don't think if you looked at the purpose of Parks and Rec, that is that purpose.
Our responsibility is not just as it relates to Parks and Rec or Public Works or any specific aspect of what the city provides for public services. It is to look at the entire range of what we offer, what we have in place, and what taxpayers pay for.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, I understand, like, where you're coming from on a larger scale, which is why we are sitting here tonight saying, you know what, we need to expand the budget for Parks and Rec. We need to offer our residents more amenities. I mean, our residents are asking for those things. We are listening, and we are wanting to do those things. But we don't have to do them and or. The disc golf course is there, it's been done, and guess what? We get to now move forward, and we get to have additional, right? We can add on to it. We can have more amenities for residents. We can't look at every single thing and say it's an or, choose. We don't need to necessarily choose. We need to be obviously fiscally responsible with the tax dollars, which is what we are looking at with planning moving forward, but we cannot continue to look back. We have to move forward. And I feel like this is the only way to do that is to really look at the plan moving forward. We cannot go back and change what happened.
See, that's where you and I clearly philosophically disagree.
You can go back and
'Cause
change what
we-
happened?
Absolutely, we can,
Okay, well,
and we ought to. I think it's pretty obvious and clear that's what the public is seeking. That's what they're requesting.
I would like Councilwoman Ball to go ahead and speak now. She's been waiting.
Yeah, thank you. I made some notes based on everyone's comments, so I'll see if I can try to touch on sort of where my thought process is right now. It doesn't exactly align with anyone exactly yet. Staff has put together some great recommendations for us based on Parks and Recreation's recommendation to move forward with this disc golf course expansion. I wasn't at the meeting. I just want to note I have watched the whole meeting. And I just want to reiterate that it was very even, those who spoke for and against it. So it was great to see that those people showed up, but it wasn't that, 12 people were against it and nobody was for it. It was very even for the people that showed up. Parks and Rec throughout the years has been trying to move this forward. I, for one, believe in sort of delegation and, that it's important to sort of move forward with their recommendations. But also knowing that I have been on the council for a number of years as well. And I have seen this come up many times and been here for all of those discussions, except for one. As far as based on the staff's recommendations, I would look to do a combination of C and D up there, which is sort of one of the options that was laid out, which would, to me, I would like to look at just modifying some of the holes. I know we discussed potentially only hole 5. I would appreciate, and maybe you've already done that, David, but if we were to look at all of the holes, just to make sure that there's no others were impacted properties where we could just modify or adjust the course a little bit, just to make things a little bit better. If there's no better way, then that's how it is. In addition to that, I know in the past we've discussed about adding some buffers, some foliage, some trees. I just want to reiterate my position that I think that's important to do, and I want the city to do that for those affected homeowners. As far as the parking lot, I agree that it was discussed in the past that it wasn't just going to be solely a parking lot. We discussed having bathrooms there. We discussed putting like sort of a pavilion with some place to sit there. So I don't think it was intended ever at any point to just have it all as parking. I think it's appropriate to sort of reduce the size for parking. Again, I don't think it was ever intended that all of it was going to be parking. As far as the park budget, I don't want to address that at this point. I think that'll come up when we look at the budget based on the rest of the agenda here and when we have those discussions about a budget later on this summer for next year. Tournaments, I do think that it makes sense to look at putting some sort of a limit on the number of tournaments and then creating a permitting process for that. I would look to staff to come up with a recommendation as to what they feel is appropriate number. Michael, I know you said 5. I don't have any sort of idea as to what is, an appropriate number. I mean, for that over the summer. Maybe it's 1 a month, I don't know. But I would look to staff to sort of look at that. Also in the Parks and Rec meeting, and I wish the attorney was still here because I was going to ask him this question, maybe you know the answer to it, about setting up an account for getting donations or funding to help with the costs for the disc golf course, to maintain it.
So we don't have to have set, excuse me, we don't have to set up a special account. The city is a nonprofit organization, so anyone can always make a donation to the city.
Okay.
Per statute, all donations have to be accepted by the council, but anyone can donate cash, a real asset, anything, pretty much anything to the city, and then the council just chooses whether or not to accept that donation.
But you can also target where you want the money to go. My
Cor-
wife and I donated to the cemetery, and we said specifically the funds are to
Yeah.
go to the cemetery.
Correct. Like tonight, you have on the consent agenda a donation to specifically the Pelican Woods Cemetery.
Okay. So as long as that's clear that can just be done. And as the permitting process, I would like us to look at in the budget if there's some sort of expense for those permits. Maybe we can look at that for the budget process for next year, if that makes sense. And that can be maybe a discussion with council at those workshops as to whether that is appropriate. I think that covers everything that I have.
Oh, one additional thought I have, as far as parking, the cemetery, the future part of the cemetery we use for butterfly release parking. I do not want to see tournament parking in the streets. And we could use that parking lot, and it's up to the tournament organizers to figure out how they're going to shuttle players, to the course to alleviate any issues with parking in residential areas, especially that one. The other one was not, there wasn't very many properties abutting, the existing 18 holes.
I think tonight
I would have a little issue with that if we move forward with that, just due to the fact that if there is a burial going on, that tournaments are usually planned, probably not when people pass.
And I don't think we need to discuss
Okay,
those
sorry.
things tonight. I think what you're saying is accurate in the fact that I think tonight what we need to do is make a decision about how we're moving forward with this. But I absolutely 100% agree. Then the next thing we need to do is to direct the Parks and Recs Board to establish the rules, to establish the procedures, for the city staff to look at permitting, limiting the number of tournaments. So I think there is a lot of direction that we could give tonight that is going to then move us closer to alleviating some of the things. I know that there's also been, there is donations as far as costs by Shane and the group when it comes to the trees, comes to the blinds, comes to, silencers. So there are those things. So we lock those things down. We understand exactly what they're going to be giving to the residents, what that looks like as far as a cost. And then I also think that even tonight with hole 5 is kind of the hole that we know is the biggest issue. And granted, it was already designed before that resident moved in. So it's not like it was just designed without a resident in mind. I think that it would make sense to look at that hole now and additional holes later, given the fact that we haven't even had a full summer yet. We don't even really look at the play, look at what happens this summer, look at what happens with the tournament. So a lot of things sometimes are trial and error when it comes to new, Parks and Recs activities. So I think at the end of the day, hole 5 is kind of one that we know needs to be corrected now. And we can change things as we go. We might say, no more tournaments. These tournaments are just too much for the city and we can't have any more. I mean, if that's, maybe it doesn't go that way. Maybe it goes the fact that, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. Everyone was super respectful. So there's a lot of unknowns that we can make changes later, but I think tonight we just need to make a decision and move forward. And again, we can make changes later.
So with that being said, and hearing comments, and hearing that changes later can be made, I would make a motion then, I'm going to break them down, that the city will move forward with the use of disc golf course in the development of the Outlot A.
That's the only motion.
That's the only motion. I'm going to break them down into separate motions.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on that?
So can you repeat the motion again, Mike?
Yep, that the disc golf course will continue as currently designed, and we're going to get into holes, currently designed as planned, and will finish as staff time allows in Outlot A, where the development has occurred.
So no redesign, everything is as is.
I'm gonna be getting to that, but the point is that it will continue.
All right.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
My second part of that would be that hole number 5, pin number 5, is not to be placed at the time that we are completing it until staff time allows to realign to the west. Specifically calling out only hole number 5 in this motion.
I don't agree with that. I think the
Hold
whole
on,
fuck.
do we have a second? Okay. No second.
Okay.
You can second. As the mayor, you can second. If you want.
I would like to second that. I think that and now for discussion, I think that at least now we're looking at hole 5 and we can look at other holes later. So we're specifically saying right now that we are not going to place that. We are going to adjust it. And we're just talking about that specific hole.
I'm not bringing up any holes.
Yeah,
Within
it's not-
this is this hole only. We can build upon other,
But my fear is that won't happen.
But if,
That's my fear, that if we just focus on hole 5 and, oh, well, down the road, we'll get to that I don't agree with. I do agree to removing 5, and, which is curtains, correct?
yep.
And Wallings.
Removing or moving?
Removing. Wallings and Olson's and Toffs. Remove those holes, and then that would be agreeable to me. But I want those holes removed. You still have
I'm sorry, what hole? 5?
5, I don't know the specific hole numbers. I've never really seen a full design that, lists property. I'm in agreement with Brad on that. There's not readily available, but I think that
No.
So I'm fine with adjusting hole 5, but what I would still like to see is either staff say that they've worked with the designers to look at all the other holes to make sure there's not a way to sort of alleviate some of their concerns with those holes, with the proximity to their homes. Even if that's just adding some sort of coverage or foliage or something, or buffers. I sort of agree with the fact that if we just direct hole 5, that all the other holes will probably not get looked at, and that's just probably due to all the other things that will be going on.
I'll
so.
clarify my motion then. I'm only talking about hole number 5. A subsequent motion will be made to address other holes.
Okay, that's fine.
To answer that, I don't
Yeah,
think
it's-
that's
it's-
answering Steve, maybe, I don't know, but I think that's addressing
It's in the
Rebecca.
process of what he's.
My only thing is, right now, we just approved that the disc golf course will continue as planned.
Right.
I'm saying that hole 5, pin number 5, do not place right now.
Yes.
It will not be placed until staff time allows to realign it to the west,
He's going to address more holes after this motion.
to
so
allow
it's-
more coverage and more buffer.
as long as they're addressed.
Yeah.
And David, the west is where you feel that it is appropriate to move it.
Left from T-box, house left.
Yes.
So, any other discussion on this? All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next motion.
Ms. Ball, you had specific holes that you're mentioning. I'm going to let you make that motion for addressing for which holes and accommodations.
Yeah, I think it's, it's Olson's and the Wallens and, the individuals who have come forward, the curtains, which is hole 5, I understand, but, sorry,
I just want to get a clarification while you finish your.
yeah. So the individuals that have come forward that have specifically had issue with the expansion and the placement of the holes, that's sort of my concern, to address,
You want additional buffering?
or
planted?
looking at moving those holes so that they are not in as close proximity to the home, one or the other.
Should we have a time frame on that? So, because obviously, we can look at, I don't know what holes they are.
Would it be appropriate, Madam Mayor, that could we allocate, since this seems like I don't want to say boiling plate, but an item of discussion that Mr. Jensen and Ms. Ball are bringing up, that they actually work with staff and resident owners on site?
The one concern I have is the residents that came forward were very clear. Their buffering isn't acceptable. They want the holes removed. I think in this whole process, there are residents for and residents against, and there has to be some compromise. And to do that, the holes, I feel, should be removed. Buffering, I just don't see that that's a solution.
You worked with all 4.
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council, so first of all, I don't know if a motion's technically been made, I guess. It's
No,
more
we were
discussion.
discussing-
So,
no.
I will discuss this. So from staff's perspective, in this situation, I'll be honest, we would prefer just the definitive remove. Here's the reason. We've gotten a lot of comment. We've listened. We had people, gotten lots of comment in the last few months. Parks, Rec, you, those that have come into our office. There isn't a consensus. And yes, if you want staff, if you want us, myself, Public Works Supervisor Zierden to go out and look at the holes, we can, but then we're using our discretion. And my concern is our discretion. I feel that you all do have something in mind. And I feel that our discretion, we might come back, I can do this in a month, and we might come back and sit here and do this again. So at this, I'm just being honest, at this point, I think it would be beneficial more from staff. We're looking at what do you want done? You know, I had some recommendations in here, things to consider. Again, I recommended hole 5. I didn't recommend the others. Again, if you want me to go back out and look, and we can, I just don't know, again, for, you know, Councilmember Jensen or even Councilmember Scott, again, will our recommendations, re-recommendation suit what you're looking for?
I'm gonna answer that.
And so,
Well, I agree
I guess
with
I think I'd go back to this either, again, really clarification of what is it you want. If you want certain things done, it's just easier for us to know what exactly it is. Because again, I'm just concerned that we're gonna come back and it's still not gonna be what you're looking for.
Well, I think I clearly stated what my thoughts are and what I would like to see done. I mean, hole 5 and those other residence holes be removed. We still have disc golf, plenty of it. I don't see that personally as a big issue. Talking about buffering, more foliage, trees, I mean, we've been down that path many times. It's not, and I agree with David. I mean, you can't, it's either this or that. Staff needs clear recommendation, and that is my recommendation, that hole 5 plus the residents mentioned, those holes be removed.
Councilman Ball?
Yeah, I guess I'll just reiterate, and it was probably a year ago where we did, and it maybe was before you were administrator, David, but we did say that for those individuals who were impacted that had come forward, those 4 residents, that we were going to do some sort of buffering for them. So again, I apologize if you're only looking at hole 5, and I know Shane has talked about looking at sort of redesigning some of the holes as well, so I don't know if the designers had specific recommendations of possible ways to change some of the holes, so there's still 18, but they're moved. I apologize, I don't have the intricate knowledge of that. So if I'm way off base, I apologize. That is sort of where my thinking is. And you can come back to me in a month and say, Rebecca, like that is not, we cannot change any of them. It's not physically possible, but we can put some bushes here. And I know that they have asked for it to be removed, but I still think it would be nice. And it might be nice for those who use the disc golf course too. I think everybody, you know, is not trying to invade other people's privacy when they're doing those sort of activities. But.
So what you're saying is that you would like clear answers as to what is possible besides hole removal on those 2 holes that affect those, Toft, Walling, and
5 or
Olson.
6 holes. I think the section that's being discussed right now is really a section about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's about 9 holes. So it's not like 3 or 4, it's 9.
Yeah, I wasn't saying 4 holes. I was saying the 4 homeowners.
The 4 homeowners, yeah. But I'm just clarifying, we're talking about 9 holes in total.
Thank you for clarifying that, because that's why I went with 9, and I believed,
Yeah. Based off of what the descriptions we're looking at holes.
but us not having maps or.
Yeah, based off the description that we're having, essentially it's holes 5 through 14.
So that leaves 9.
That leaves
So
9.
27 contiguous holes.
I think I don't know, I think removing 9 holes is just not, I mean, the process we've done this process like you had laid out. And it sounds like in this case, I mean, the only way that you would support it is if you just took out 9 holes,
Correct.
is what you're saying.
Correct. The buffering, the only group that has talked about vegetation or trees is the Disc Golf Club. The city has never committed that, to my knowledge. And then you have issues of how do you water this? So that if all this vegetation is planted in trees, there's no means, Public Works then has to go to the cemetery, haul water, water all this vegetation, and if you're planting any tree, it requires a significant amount of water. If we have a wet summer, we're probably good. But nobody from the city I have seen has committed to this vegetation. That's been the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club and the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club only.
But would
My-
that change your mind, though, if they were dedicated to it?
No,
Okay, so that's kind of.
Well, but the point that, okay, we're gonna look at vegetation, it's not a viable option because it's gonna die, period. Unless somebody, so now you have additional taxpayer dollars towards watering and additional maintenance to keep it alive. So,
What would be your motion? What
I
is-
mean, I'm not a landscaper, but like, I guess I would assume there's some sort of plant that doesn't require like a whole bunch of watering. Maybe it's not trees, because trees would take 40 years to grow, so maybe that's not the best option for an immediate sort of help with that issue. I'm just,
I'll just add, again, I'll just add, I think Councilmember Jensen is correct. Any vegetation obviously has to take, and there's no source of water back there. Even hauling water back there is going to be very, very difficult.
dangerous.
And so that is that's a big hamper to trying to put new vegetation in there. My other comment with vegetation is you got to remember exactly where a lot of these properties are situated, and they are situated for the most part, not every single one of them, above the course. So anything short of like a 10-foot tree is really not going to, aid. A 2-foot shrub's not going to do anything. And that's why I think what I've been hearing from the residents, it's not they want shrubberies, it's they want the trees back. And again, there really is no way. Sure, we can get 10-footers and spade them in there, which I don't even know how we necessarily even get them back there to do that. But those again require lots and lots of watering, irrigation that we don't have. That's where back in April, I think it was in April, when we brought back the request for the cost of returning it back, that's why we recommended the saplings. You put 2,400 saplings and you'll see what takes. It could be some of them, it could be all of them, more than likely it would be none of them. And then even then, it's going to be 20 years before they're anything. So it's kind of where I guess I'm at with vegetation. It's not that we can't do it. It's not going to have any immediate results. If the immediate result is the goal, it's not going to have, I think, the immediate results that people might desire.
I just have to add, I mean, I can't help but to feel we're sitting here spending all kinds of time on the details of the development of property that's already questionable, that should have been part of a plan. I mean, again, the time, the resources just wasted needlessly.
Councilmember Rooney, do you have anything on this specific?
No, honestly, when I reviewed staff notes about he worked with the 4 property owners, again, we've addressed hole number 5. That leaves us the 3 property owners to the north. Full well known that a discussion of this moving forward was going to be concluded. There was no resolution brought forward from those 3 individuals of what they wanted to see besides hole removal. I'm not in favor of hole removal. So without seeing what they didn't bring anything more forward, I was not prepared to bring forward a new solution. They had the opportunity to come work with staff to bring up that solution. Their solution, which was pretty much all it was removal, and that's something I'm not for. So I'm not prepared to move forward with any different to offer to this discussion.
Yeah, I will also say I'm not in favor of whole removal at all, either, at this point. So, not to say that things can't, if it really becomes an issue. I mean, there's a lot of things that we don't know that we can always change later if it becomes an issue, but I'm not in favor today of removing holes. And I do, when you look at that land, their houses where they sit and how it looks down, we don't have the trees, the water, we don't have that, and those resources and time, that are gonna fix that right now.
I guess I've stated where I'm at. I have nothing further to say.
Yeah, I mean, if staff's indicating that that's not doable, then we can move forward without that. But that is, just for the record, that's something I wanted the staff to look at, and they don't think that it's doable, so.
I'd make another motion to place a maximum of 5 PDGA tournaments per year, and that a special event permit staff would start to be prepared. No additional tournaments shall be scheduled this year that have not already been previously authorized.
And there's one, correct?
I have not a clue.
I think it's just the one in June, right, Daniel? July. Yeah,
So
there's
only
one in July.
There's only one this year. Okay, there's two this year.
2 this year on the original 18
Who approved those, may I ask?
staff. So that
Current
was
staff?
current staff.
But
So
we will look at what that looks like in the future.
Sorry, your motion was for,
to limit 5 PDGA tournaments per year, staff will develop a special event permit to apply for, and no additional tournaments shall be scheduled until such permit is created.
I don't think we should set a limit on any number of tournaments till we see how the tournaments, if they are allowed to go forward, and apparently it's been approved.
Has that motion been seconded?
No.
No.
Okay, so before we discuss the motion, we should,
Modify before we,
if you want to, I would say just no further discussion should happen until we have a second on that motion.
hearing him already talk about discussion.
Is there a second?
I'm going to modify my motion. I'll make a motion to direct staff to create a special event permit for the disc golf course use, and no additional tournament shall be scheduled beyond the 2 that have already been approved until such permit is developed and enforced.
So
Okay, a second. I need a second. Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? So basically, we're saying that no more tournaments besides the 2 that are here, and we're going to work on getting permits.
that's
For
fine.
future.
I don't agree with it, so I mean, proceed.
Which part?
I don't want to see that we're going to have tournaments until we know the 2 have gone smoothly. I agree with the permitting process, but I think next year that should be a council discussion as to are tournaments going to be allowed.
Let-
I'm not saying no.
Nope.
already
And,
2
but there's
scheduled
2 already
this year.
scheduled.
Yeah, but I understand
And
those.
so what I'm
That's
saying
what we're
is,
saying.
no more tournaments beyond those 2, no more tournaments until the permitting process is finalized.
So we're not removing them.
But the permitting process being finalized, is the assumption then made that there will be tournaments? I mean, does the council have to approve them? Does staff approve them?
That will be part of the permitting process that will be coming back in front of us to approve the permitting
I
process.
can live with,
Okay.
if we're part of
Yes.
the permitting.
Until we approve the permitting process, no more tournaments beyond the 2 that
Yep,
that are already
I'm
been
fine with
scheduled.
that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just maybe clarification, so the council's action that's being taken, as is the case, is it the case then that we're acknowledging it's being done so without any alternative considerations by the Park and Rec Committee, nor waiting for recommendation on the zoning from the Planning and Zoning Commission?
And that's not what this
So-
part of the motion is. We're not talking about that. We can
But my
address that
question
afterwards.
is, are we acknowledging as a council that the decisions to move the expansion forward are being done so, acknowledging there was zero?
Okay, that is not what we're
consideration.
discussing for this motion, okay? We need to discuss this
I
motion.
think I'm entitled to
Right.
ask for clarification and to
But we're
receive it.
discussing this motion, though. This motion pertaining to this one.
That involves moving forward with the expansion of the disc golf
That
course.
involves the permitting.
Oh, well, I guess I'm thoroughly confused.
Okay.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
I just,
Oh,
just a point of discussion. you mentioned PDGA specifically to the Turners, not in your motion, but before. I guess once that permitting process is finalized, I'm not completely sure that the limit on the number should be specific to any sort of organization sponsoring a tournament.
And at this point, that motion was redirected to not put a limit on
Right.
it because we want to see what the
Right.
permitting process
Correct,
looks like.
just for point of discussion, because you mentioned it before.
And the two that have been scheduled are only on the original 18, not part of the, we don't know when the back 18 will be done. It's as staff time allows at this point.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, was there anything else on your list?
I don't know if it'd be a motion, but I'd like to offer a recommendation to the Finance Committee to then consider increasing the budget for Parks and Rec consideration while looking at the budget. I don't know if you want that as a motion, but it's a recommendation that at least we consider increasing it. Consider, not saying we're not saying a dollar amount, that we just consider.
I think Parks and Rec was coming with that recommendation potentially as well.
I think so too.
I don't know for sure.
They're gonna be
if they
discussing it.
finalized that, but
Okay.
they
So
were-
they will present that to us.
requested to discuss it. So,
Okay, do I have a second on this?
That was just a
Okay,
recommendation,
okay.
so it's
Okay,
really no
perfect.
motion.
I think rezoning.
The parking lot?
so on that one, I think it would, at this point,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. At this point, anything that goes through, they tabled it at the planning and zoning because they didn't, I don't think they were prepared to handle that. I think though, even if they came to us, whatever they're coming to us with is only a recommendation. It is still up to us to rezone this, and we can't have a pavilion or we can't have a playground. We can't until it is rezoned. So we can't do that
I
either.
think the comment, I think what would be maybe pertinent, Madam Mayor, would be a motion to either continue the rezoning process or to essentially rescind the rezoning request. So one of those two options I think would be pertinent at this time.
We can't rezone it. We can't vote to rezone tonight.
While you are the ending authority, my recommendation would generally be is do the process.
So let them.
Let
at
them make
next
their
meeting-
recommendation.
The next meeting, and then they can come to us.
So
with
my
this.
recommendation, I guess my recommendation would be to provide direction to either continue with it,
Yes.
have the planning commission reconvene and consider the application, if that's what you want, or the other option is to rescind that application.
I'd make a motion that planning and zoning continues to reevaluate the conditional use permit, the rezoning of the parcels for public use.
Second.
Any discussion?
So we acknowledge the expansion to be connected to the parcels that were purchased for the parking lot, correct? The two go together,
Yeah,
right? So without the parking lot, doesn't really make the expansion of the disc golf course as viable as it could be?
no, what that would mean is that we'd have on-street parking if it's not approved.
It's not approved, then
Oh, so you would resort to on-street parking then at that point?
we'd have to.
Just like
Oh, okay.
Fishing Pier, and that's why I believe it will go through. We've talked about the increase of a pavilion for community members that were brought up in as far as alternate and additional uses of such land. We've heard comments about having a park near that area. And I believe that, in my opinion, this would be a great place. The Parks and Rec have also already discussed that, having been there. So it's not rezoning it for a parking lot, it's rezoning it for public use, which includes a parking lot, yes, but it also includes pavilion, park equipment, playground.
And anything else that residents would like to see there. Okay, any discussion on that?
I agree. I'd like to see the process go to P and Z. I mean, that's where it should be.
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, I think that is,
Parking lot size, do we need to discuss that, or is there no motion on that?
I think, Madam Mayor, that might be, you can discuss it now, otherwise, again, this has to come back to you once the
Yeah, we'll
rezoning's
just-
done. It may be just for the sake of the process, it might be good just to save that discussion for, should the planning commission once it comes back to you to make a decision, final decision on the rezoning, maybe discuss it at that point. Because then at that point, that process is out of the way.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have anything on this? All right. We will move on to approving the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
Also move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, new business. Administrator Chansky, workshop.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, just pulling that up here. Just give me 1 second, please. Yes, so the next two items, wanted to put these again just for, we talked about, making sure the public stays aware of things that are going on. So the next two items are really just their summaries of the last of the two special meetings or the two workshops the council had in May. The first being the City Council workshop on May 16th. Again, that was for the council to receive and discuss the final report from WITSEF on the City Hall facility assessment. Got the summaries in there. You met at 1, concluded about 3:30. And all the supporting documentation that was presented to you is included in the packet. One thing I really wanted to kind of talk about is what we heard from the council from that meeting. Again, just a workshop. The council took no formal action, but we just wanted to kind of follow up with what we heard as staff. You were presented essentially kind of the 4 options. First, you received obviously the facility assessment report itself, and then kind of presented 4 options for moving forward with that. The first being really kind of conduct the basic repairs on the existing City Hall building as identified in that report. The second, to conduct repairs and expand the building to address space constraints and future needs. The third, to construct a new City Hall building, preserve the existing building for a public use to be identified in the future. And then the fourth is just a modified version of number 3, which is construct a new City Hall building with some community amenities and then demolish this existing building. And really what we heard kind of from the council is that option 2, that construct basic repairs and to expand the building to address space constraints and future needs was kind of the bare minimum. If you were to move forward with something, you'd want to kind of number 2 was kind of the bare minimum because number 1 didn't address the space needs what we have today. And then option 4 being the second one, the biggest concern between option 3 and option 4 was the fact that with building a new City Hall, it doesn't address, the cost to build a new City Hall doesn't address the almost $1 million worth of deficiencies this building still has. So that is what we heard. What we heard also from you is that before any of the council really wanted to consider this further, that you really wanted to get public input. Let the public kind of weigh in, see what was presented and kind of give their way in. And then you also wanted a full financial analysis. So that's what's going on. Right now, Baker Tilly, they provide you that kind of that extremes. If you had to bond the whole thing, what the low end looks like, what the high end looks like. And right now they're doing a full analysis. Again, I was able to show them, focus on these 2 options because that's what the council seemed to indicate. And they'll be doing a full analysis looking really into all our finances. And that's to come as well. But on the public engagement side, so we sat down and kind of created a plan that we're starting essentially immediately. And it's really kind of 4 parts. The first is that all the documentation provided by WITSEF and Baker Tilly will be posted to the new city's website, which we're going to be providing an update here later on. But in short, we're looking to get your authorization to launch the new website starting June 12th. On that new website, we'll be working on creating project pages. That's one thing. Another thing we heard at the retreat and such, and what we've been hearing from you, is so each of our projects we have going on, they'll have dedicated pages where all updates will be, all the documentation, supporting documentation will be there so public can find that. And also on that page, when we work on creating a space, essentially for the public to go to and provide questions and comments online. So we'll also have an online format people can go to. In addition, WITSEF took some of the renderings that they presented to you and prepared us some bulletin boards, pin boards that we just got delivered tonight. And so we're going to, tomorrow, be working on creating a standing display in City Hall right in the entrance. So anyone comes in, it'll be right there. They can take a look at it, ask us questions as they want. We'll provide comment cards, again, so the public can be kind of, as they come in, engaging with it and making comments in person. The third is that we've scheduled an open house for Wednesday, June 14th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Again, this open house is really for the staff to come, for the public to come in, talk with staff, staff from Widseth. The architects from Widseth will be here to answer any questions. Really, again, this time is not for us to really talk at people, but again, we want to hear from them. You know, we'll provide information as kind of like what brought us here, what we've talked about, for example, at the workshop. But at the end of the day, we're here to listen. That's kind of, again, the point of that open house. Come on in. Again, that'll be the dedicated time that the folks from Widseth will be here. Also, it'll be after hours, so if people want to tour this building, see the intricate, the staff spaces, not like there's too much to see there, but if they want to walk in the staff spaces, walk into our offices, they can. We'll open up the basement. We'll take them into the basement, and they can see our archive room. And so people can also kind of get an in-depth look at that as well. Obviously, members of the council are encouraged to attend. And then finally, we are actively marketing these 3 engagement opportunities in all our, through our social media. We've already begun that. Daniel, I think, posted it last week. We've issued a public notice of that open house. Also with that public notice, noticing that a quorum of the council may be present. So if if 3 or more of you show up at the same time, we're covered. And then using other pieces of engagement, such as the city website, press releases that we'll talking about later, and then also the city hall sign. So that is where we're at, kind of moving forward with the next steps. The financial analysis, I think we're expecting that probably in July, and we'll discuss that a little bit when we hit the budget calendar item. So I'll take any questions the council has. If you want to add anything to my synopsis. One action we are requesting on this item, this is where I did put the minutes from that workshop. So when you are done, any questions or discussion you have, I would appreciate approval of the minutes from May 16th.
I would like to make a comment on this. Given all of the feedback that we have heard from residents about being informed and information, this workshop, we had 1 person come from our community. It was the most informative thing you could have listened to as we kick off the discussion for City Hall. On social media, I see, there are people that say we already took a hard stance. No one took a hard stance at that meeting. We asked questions, we talked, we discussed things. And from there, I've seen also, they're going to raise our taxes because they want a new building. That is not what happened. We had a workshop. We discussed options. And again, so I just want to encourage people to please look to attend these, because this is the timeline. When we look back 2 years from now, we are going to be referencing the same things that we talked about in the disc golf. And these are so important. And I think the other thing you guys have to understand, and when we have discussions in our workshops, and we have asked for more workshops so that we can make more educated decisions for our residents. And at these workshops, they are discussions. They are throwing out ideas. Not everyone's ideas. I don't have all the best ideas. We just throw out ideas, and we're trying to be creative, and we're trying to work together, and we're trying to make good decisions. So I really, really, really encourage the next workshop that we have, if anyone is concerned about our taxes increasing, if they want to hear about the options, please attend, because they're very informative. They're easy to understand. We break down the numbers, and we are doing our due diligence. So it was a great workshop. I can't wait to have more workshops and other projects that we have for the city, but we are really working hard to make sure that moving forward, the decisions that we're making, we are informed and we're working with our residents. Does anyone else have any?
I got nothing to follow that up with.
Well, I have 2 thoughts, actually. I think part of the lack of attendance is considering the day of the week and the time of the day. It might be relatively doable for us as council members to make a workshop meeting during the work week, during the workday work, but for quite a number of other people, that's not a luxury that they can afford.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
everyone can make the meetings. I'm just saying, please note how important these meetings are. And if you can't attend, talk to one of us. Have a conversation with us. Have us give you a synopsis of what happened. That's all I'm saying. I understand that, okay? I do. All right, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Did you have a second thing?
I did, but I don't think it's worth saying it.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. City Council retreat minutes, Mr. Orchansky?
Yep, so, Madam Mayor, in this section, I just put the, kind of the brief minutes, from the meeting, again, with the retreat. It's not again, it was just a lot of discussion had. I kind of created this item. Is there anything that you as a council, again, wanted to share that you took away, from the retreat? I think we did have a lot of discussion regarding various topics on, again, the leadership of the organization. Really, I think we talked a lot about engagement, importance of engagement, communication, transparency, and trust. And if there's anything, really kind of leaving this, anything that the council wants to discuss that they took away from the retreat, Madam Mayor, I'm kind of, this is your platform.
My big, every time you go to a meeting or a conference, you want to take away that big nugget. And one of the things I shared is in the past, as packets were released, I had questions of staff. And so I'd always call up staff, ask questions, get them clarified. And so when it came time to the decision, my questions were already addressed. And so it was very easy for me to understand where that was going. And our facilitator made mention that may not always be best because it doesn't show that I had questions, that it was just taking everything as face value. So it was one of the things that I learned a little bit to communicate more, that I should present that I had questions on X, Y, Z, called staff, got my answers, and share that not everything is clear as day to everybody. Everybody reads something and understands things differently, and there are things that I need further clarification, and I've called staff and gotten that direction on, but I haven't clarified that. I thought that was my biggest takeaway from that.
I thought it was very productive. I mean, the workshops as council, and, Brad touched on this earlier, we get these packets late Friday. There's a lot going on. It's tough to review it all, take in, because a lot of it is very detail oriented, that the workshops do help, I think, the council to make, more informed decisions. We need the time, we need the additional information, and, time to look into it.
Any takeaways?
Well, I guess my takeaway was it would have been nice to, as a council, have had an opportunity to actually provide some kind of a structure or framework for our time. I feel like we ended up covering a lot through general discussion without really getting to anything directly or specifically. In addition, I would have liked to have seen city staff, department heads, a part of that conversation, a part of that workshop. That was initially, anyway, part of the idea that was floated out there, was to have their involvement. I think that could have only have improved the conversations.
I'd second that, and I think that'd be a great additional workshop to be scheduled, is with department heads and just get more knowledge.
I agree.
I'd
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, any other discussion?
Yeah, just quickly, I just
yeah,
wanted
sorry,
to say, no, that's, that I thought the meeting was done very well. It was nice to have a mayor from another city sort of come in and sort of facilitate that discussion. I think that was helpful. Part of the discussion, and I just had to pull up the agenda, like talking about teamwork and like how do you work together, and you don't always have to agree, but you have to make decisions. And I think that brings us back to the disc golf course. expansion and just making those decisions, again, so we can move on to other things for the city. And that was one of my takeaways from that. Also, it was nice to see that some of the things we discussed there, like having those project pages, you know, is actually happening. So we did discuss doing some sort of project page, so when projects happen, there's a place to go and easily find that information on those projects, and that looks like that is going to happen. So it's nice to see that those discussions kind of result in actual things happening. So thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And that leads us into a perfect segue to our communication improvements that we are working on.
And that'll be Assistant Administrator Ike is going to take this one, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you get close to it. Yeah. Okay, so we're here to talk about communications. I know sometimes it can be very frustrated. This takes a really, really long time. I swear to you, Administrator Chansky and I have been working on this in the background. There's a lot of things that we have accomplished on developing social media thus far. I'm sure as many of you have noticed, I really love pictures. And I've started standardizing a lot of our branding and our images that we're using and those sorts of things happening online. Part of the reason we're talking about that is because, the first thing that we want to talk to you about today, based upon what you guys have said in the past and previous direction you've given, is we would like to propose making a Nextdoor. So Nextdoor is just some background for you. It is a social media platform. It's been around since about 2008 or so. It's sort of floated around before then, but that was really when it came into sort of becoming what it was. And it's been growing recently all across the nation as a competitor, I guess one could say, to Facebook for many, many years now. It is used extensively in this community. We've done some look at that, and people are always saying they're on Nextdoor and they're talking on Nextdoor, and they'd really like it if we could start posting things on Nextdoor so that they have a little more information on exactly what's going on there. It is difficult a lot of the times for people to kind of maintain two social media presences and try to organize everything out. So that's sort of the first step, I guess, that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight was, if we do make a Nextdoor, that it would please be at the discretion of the city administrator, same as the Facebook is right now, so that we can start producing that stuff. And just so you're aware, most of what would be posted on Nextdoor would be pretty much identical to what it is on Facebook. The goal would be to kind of match them together so that the information streams are as identical as I can physically get them, so that everybody's looking at the same material. And as we develop that out, hopefully there'll be some developments there that I can move on to Facebook as well. We can kind of start improving both of them together at the same time. That's sort of the first item I wanted to bring before you guys. Any thoughts on that, or what you guys would like to see on Nextdoor, or language or posts or anything like that that you've noticed I've done on Facebook that you might want to work with, or any thoughts at all?
I do have a question. Is there a cost associated?
No, Nextdoor's free.
Okay. Even from a city perspective?
Yeah. So it is a free platform, same as everything else, similar to Facebook. We'll go on there and we'll set it up as a sort of master level community account. The way that accounts work on Nextdoor with municipalities is a little bit different from what regular users will see. We will have a master level account that, last I checked, they were free. That's an interesting question. I'm pretty sure they still are. I'll get back to you. If it's not, you'll know. I'm almost positive it still is. So I don't think there's a problem there, but we'll double check. But when you create a master level sort of municipal account on Nextdoor, it works kind of like a streaming messaging kind of high level account service. So anybody who is registered within the community that is currently Breezy Point and has an address in the area would receive notices automatically based upon which communities and neighborhoods I select that are live in the area. I'll have access to all that information. Normal accounts don't necessarily have access to all that really high level stuff that we'll have access to. So the reach is a lot more targeted than it is on Facebook, which can be helpful sometimes, because Facebook is very algorithm driven, and sometimes people just don't see stuff. Our Facebook is growing. It's doing okay. It's also suffering from the very typical things you see suffering on from Facebook, where procedural posts and technical things like meeting reminders like this, they just don't get pushed by the algorithm because it's not interesting. So community posts tend to do better, but with Nextdoor, the nice thing is it's got a strong presence in the community already, and you don't have to worry about as much of that because it'll just get pushed if I post it. So.
And if I can, Daniel, one other thing to add, because it's a municipal level account, unlike Facebook where people have to opt in by liking our page, once we are the identified municipality, the governing entity, they automatically will start seeing our stuff. So there is no need to opt in. Everyone in that selected neighborhood Daniel was talking about will see our stuff immediately.
I personally think it's an excellent idea. It gives us another avenue to communicate with the residents, let them, what we post. We have council meetings, we have workshops, we're working on this, the website's been released. Just projects, Bushman, City Hall. This is the truth, this is what's going on, this is what we're putting out there. I do not see any reason why we would not get on the Nextdoor app, but to me it makes sense.
Are you looking for a motion from us tonight to do that? Or, okay.
It would be helpful, yeah.
How does establishing a presence like this work within our existing social media policy? Does the city have a policy in that way?
So when I got here, one of the first things I looked at was developing a social media communications policy. We do not have an official policy that's actually on draft that you guys have accepted right now. I have a draft together that we're still kind of piecing together as we develop things. Part of the reason you guys haven't had a draft in the past, to be frank, was your social media especially was not really built out enough to demand one. Really, it was Facebook, and you guys maybe were doing 3 posts a month sometimes. Some months you just weren't posting at all. I've built that out quite a bit since I got here, and we're posting usually about once a week on average. I'm trying to post more than that because if you want Facebook to push your content, you have to. You have to be frank, appease the almighty algorithm to get anything done. And that requires me to post, so I've been trying to post. As it stands right now, though, I don't think there's any real issue because pretty much everything that I'm posting on Facebook would be the same exact material I'm posting on Nextdoor and vice versa. As we develop and we go through it a little bit more, there are some things that we are going to want to do mostly internally regarding who has access to accounts and who's truly in charge of accounts and those sorts of things, which we have talked about. Administrator Chansky and I have talked about. Like I said, we are working on that draft policy. It's not really truly ready to present at this time, especially though as we start to grow these things out. Yeah, we're gonna need to bring it before you guys for consideration because once we start sort of spiraling into this stuff, it gets really important to make sure the rules and procedures are set up properly.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason I was just asking about what if any policy existed in that way. Just recognize the importance of having that. I think we all understand the benefits of using social media, but laying out how the city is using it. Again, it was just one of those things that was alive and present at the newly elected officials conference, and very highly suggested that if we're going to start to increase kind of our social media footprint.
And also,
well-advised.
to that extent, and to what Daniel was saying, one of the things we've discussed is, because we kind of discussed which direction you want to go, policy first, then actual processes, and we decided that really the best thing to do for us was, let's get the council's input on some of these different avenues of communication and start kind of working through them, because that's going to ultimately affect how the communications policy is actually laid out. We don't want to set a policy and then realize the policy doesn't work for what we're actually trying to do.
And if you look at another reason to support redoing the ordinances is that if you actually look in our ordinances, a lot of what we require are mailing, handwritten, all these ways of communication they did back in the 90s before we even had social media. So it's interesting to see how some of our ordinances still talk about some of these things before this was even a thing. So we really do need to update those so that we can, get up to speed on technology for the years. So, all right.
I'd make a motion to go forward with the Nextdoor application.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, fire district.
Oh, no,
Madam Mayor, there's like two more things
Oh,
on this
yeah, two
item.
more things.
we got a
Sorry.
ways to go still, Madam Mayor.
Oh, all right.
This is actually quite a bit hefty here. So, item number 2. We've heard from you guys a couple times now and from members of the public that you'd kind of like maybe a bit more engagement from local media and maybe try to push them a little bit more or engage them a little bit harder to try and get stuff in the paper and out by them more professionally. In my experience, to be honest, the best way to engage any media is to provide the content to them. So in much the same vein of what we're recommending with the Nextdoor, we're wondering tonight if you guys would be willing to allow us to start drafting press releases. So I actually have an example press release below here that I can show you guys real quick.
Which you need to translate, by the way.
It is, yeah, it's gibberish text. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Lorem Ipsum. You use it for kind of monkeying around in format designs and things like that. But so this is, in theory, kind of a very basic, easy to work with press release. I've used formats basically identical to this before with other cities and with different political officials and things. There's not a lot of bells and whistles to this, to be frank. The reason for that is because there's not supposed to be. So this is just a very simple, it's got our logo on it, it's got the immediate release symbol, it's got context, usually will be the person who sends it out, which will probably be myself in most situations, and a director or somebody who's high level on the project who might be able to answer questions. I'll be honest with you, 90% of the time it'll probably be me and Administrator Chansky, with just kind of the way that this organization is set up, or possibly even just myself. But this is kind of how they generally look. It's meant to be, like I said, nice and simple, easy to deal with. I can draft these out. I can kind of, because it's a format, I can crank them out pretty fast, to be honest, so long as I have content, and then we'll review them and make sure they look good, make sure they say what they're supposed to, and get them out as quickly as we can. Now, the sort of things that I kind of wanted to clarify with you tonight is this little section down here at the bottom, where it's got the 2 and the 3 hashtags there. This is usually a mission statement, or like a guiding statement, or like some information about the city that you just want included in every press release. Doesn't need to be there. It's totally optional. I just included it to show you guys, hey, that's kind of what generally goes there. Is there anything you think you'd like put there, or are you guys thinking, just do the press release, Stan, and don't worry about that?
Can you give us an
There was
example?
a statement that we developed as part of the comprehensive plan that we sort of wordsmithed for a very long time.
Okay.
That's just an idea.
Remember what it is?
I'm sure it's in the comprehensive
like a
plan
mission
and
statement?
online. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's in the I can find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is generally the kind of thing that would go in there, just like a brief mission statement, maybe a small paragraph. If it's too long, I could even reduce it a
Is
little
there
bit
a
if I need
cost to
to.
this?
Press releases? No, I'm just going to write, well, I mean, my staff time, I guess, but I mean, you're paying me to do it already, so.
I could live without something. It's only really going to the press, and they're just going to take what they want and put it in the newspaper or whatever publication.
And to clarify also, when press releases go out, we'll be creating a list of all like significant news entities in the area. So we're not talking just the Echo. So just FYI. When we submit, press releases won't be for every little thing. Press releases are significant, like we want the public to know. And when we submit in a press, when Daniel or myself or issues a press release, it's going everywhere.
And they come up on Google, which is nice. Like if someone Googles a project, then that is going to be an additional piece of information that someone is going to have access to. So that is another benefit of doing the press releases is that it's easier to find.
Yes, and you'll see on the new website that I'll be showing you later tonight, I have a news section that I specifically designed with Civic Plus to be able to do that.
Perfect.
And I intend to use it
Perfect.
for everything.
I think it's, as we discussed at the retreat workshop, we have to throw everything against the wall, see what sticks, see what works. And I think it's another thing, why would we, not do it? It
Right.
makes sense.
It only increases visibility.
Yeah, and that's what we need. And we have to see what works, what's the most effective, what resident feedback we get.
Right.
Okay. With that in mind, then, sort of what we were wondering as me and the administrator was, if it's approved and that's okay, we did want a kind of a motion, again, same as the next door, at the office of the administrator's discretion to be able to draft these and send them out.
I'd make the motion to authorize city staff, administrator, administrative assistant to start producing press releases.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I just want to comment, it's not that I'm not in favor or supportive of yet an additional approach of getting information out to people. We start getting into press releases, to me, that's a very critical sort of piece of how we're communicating and why. That, to me, it just seems like it really should be accompanied by a policy, some overarching framework. So recognizing that that's not in place, I'm not going to vote in favor of it, but again, it's not because I don't understand the importance of it or think it's otherwise a bad idea. I'm just kind of going through a lot of the questions that have been laid out there. And to me, those are all questions along with other things that really should be embodied in a policy. So we know really how press releases are used and information that will be provided to the community.
Thank you.
Oh, and just to clarify, I looked it up quick. It's a vision statement, not a mission statement, so it might not exactly work for that purpose, but
I'll check it. We'll
Yeah.
see what it
It
can be.
might work.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I trust staff at this point. I mean, we're already posting on Facebook. If we're posting on Nextdoor, this is kind of an extension of what we would post on social media. I think that, like you guys had discussed, you guys are in the process of drafting a social media policy that is not going to happen overnight. I would rather not delay communications with our residents based on that factor alone. Any other discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so on to the next item.
Before you go on the next one,
Yep.
what is the estimated timeline of when that communications policy? Is this a July or an August item? Just curiosity.
So the draft is done with some revision and some review and administration. When do you think? August?
I think we kind of talked probably about in August. We wanted to get some direction here tonight in case you had anything you wanted to alter, especially with the next item, the newsletter that Daniel's going to discuss. Kind of, we'll start doing these things, kind of a soft launch, and then as things come up, then we can tweak the policy before we bring it forward to you. But I think our intention probably would be August.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that in mind, these last two items are not necessarily things I need you guys to vote on tonight unless you really want to for some reason. We're just trying to get a little bit of guidance here on some specific meatier stuff, shall we say. So the first of these two items is the city newsletter. Now, many people have talked to me individually in the office and here you guys have mentioned as well about trying to develop a city newsletter, something that would be sent out regularly, outline projects, talk about the city, maybe, talk about staff or, get to know your staff. I have lots of ideas. I've done city newsletters before. I will say they're great fun. They are kind of cumbersome to make. We can totally do it. It's just the issue of sort of what do you guys really envision or imagine it looking like and how many times do you want it to go out every year. I have some questions here that I thought might kind of help guide the conversation, and I do have an example newsletter that I just kind of drafted below that I thought maybe might, again, help guide the conversation. I guess we'll start with those questions then. If we were to do like a newsletter, what kind of length would you guys be imagining? You know, what kind of distribution are you imagining? Very high level questions, you know, is it a digital thing only? Is it a physical thing only? Is it a monthly thing, a quarterly thing, a yearly thing? Those kinds of questions, because I know you guys had talked about it a little bit, but again, kind of maybe try to center that down a little bit. The hope that we have right now is that maybe we can answer some of these questions a little bit, or you guys can come in after the council meeting tonight and talk to me directly about it. We can kind of narrow these things down a little bit, and then we can bring back something a little more physical in July with an actual kind of more defined plan for what we might do moving forward. Now, we're not looking at, of course, making a newsletter tomorrow. I haven't even started looking at doing that yet. So there's a little bit of time off, but we'll start by, let me kind of show you what I'm imagining right now. Sort of a basic concept design for the city. As I said, this is, again, it's lorem ipsum. It doesn't have any actual meaning to it, but this is sort of an imagined design that I'm thinking, you know, you've got a front page, just Breezy Point newsletter, or whatever you guys would like to call it, standard issue stuff. This here is a 4-pager. It's got a front and a back page that's front cover, and then back page is information for the city with 2 pages for stories on the inside. Now, on the inside here, I'm imagining a feature story. So you've got one page that's a big master page where you say, you know, feature story. You're going to see this picture a lot. I like this picture. It works a lot for framing things. But you have, you know, some basic information, little things, a note that goes alongside the picture there, you know, basic stuff. So you got a 1-pager that's a feature story. That's kind of the big story that goes in the newsletter that you've developed. Then I've kind of got a second page here that's a 2-story kind of design. So we've got a small story down here, a larger story up here. Obviously sizes, technical things can change, but you see there's pictures, there's colors. It's kind of designed out that way, trying to get a good command of the white space that's in it. And then your final page is just your back page. Now this top half right here is for EDDM information. This is probably not set up the way that it needs to be set up immediately, but just so you see, essentially what I'm imagining is this is going to be like a 2-page fold, and then you're going to fold it in half. The EDDM information is on one side so that it could potentially be sent out as physical copies to residents if we wanted to do it that way. We could send it to every address in the city, or we could do whatever. You've got basic information here, and then the other half of that back page is community calendar, QR code for the website, you know, website information, notes, disclaimers, contact information, whatever kind of stuff we want on the back there. So this is just, like I said, just something to chew on tonight, some thoughts about it. This didn't take me too long to produce. I will say, though, the formatting of a newsletter takes a long time. Just for context, like this little line here that goes around this page and kind of matches there, yeah, that took me 3 hours. Because it, for the life of me, did not want to participate. So just to give you a look under the hood a little bit, oftentimes on newsletters especially, the stuff that takes the longest are the little tiny detail things to try and make it look pretty and nice and make sure it formats and operates the way I really want it. So with that in mind, if you had any comments or questions or any thoughts, I'd love to take them.
My first thought would be the mailing of a newsletter. I mean, I like the idea of a newsletter, but for staff time and cost of mailing, you know, say you do it quarterly, what does that cost yearly? I mean, is it significant cost? I mean, I don't expect an answer tonight.
It would be significant.
And
I can answer
whereas
that.
the digital, you do not have to spend the time, as much time formatting, I would assume, or do you?
Well, for just newsletter design, yeah, I'm going to spend about the same amount of time on that. But for sending it out, you're correct. It's always much easier to send it out digitally and virtually, just because it's easier. Where you get caught up in printed newsletters is not so much the cost of the EDDM necessarily, it's the cost of printing and distributing and getting all that stuff done. It's not cheap. And we don't have a professional printer here with high gloss paper and all of the technical stuff that's needed in order to print that out. So we would probably need to find a contractor to do it for us. They could charge quite a bit of money. In my previous experience, it can cost about $3,000 a newsletter. I wouldn't pay more than that. And honestly, if they gave me a quote and they were like $3,000, I'd probably be like, it's a bit high. But just so you're aware, it can get expensive sometimes, especially depending upon the market and stuff, because ink is a bit of a limited resource and it's not always available. And if there's an ink shortage on, they're gonna charge you through the roof for it. So that's where you get caught up in it.
I like the idea of the newsletter. I think what I'd like to do is just kind of come back to it later. Reason being is because the website, we've been told that you can subscribe to updates and anything that we post. And so I think one of the things that I think a newsletter would be beneficial of is that first one is once that website is launched and we feel good about it. I know we're starting to look at that beta testing and getting that out there. But once it's launched, that's where we could do one mailer, and maybe it's January next year once we have good content. But we direct citizens to actually sign up for the e-newsletter to save on costs, and direct them to the website to sign up for any notifications that we can produce via the website. I think it's a great idea. I'm suggesting put it on pause until website is further developed is my idea.
I would agree, and I think newsletters are a perfect thing for the Nextdoor app. There's another way. Here's the newsletter. The website, being able to sign up. The website can't happen soon enough. We need it. So yeah, I would agree. Just pause the actual mailing. Let's see what the website does and go from there.
We could also look at it from a perspective of if there is somebody that would rather, potentially have a newsletter at the end of the year or something, maybe like a recap of what happened. So once a year, we do send them out to everyone in the mail. Not everybody has social media, and so maybe looking at that and, if we can reduce costs, great. Look at our options in the area. But yeah, I think there's a lot here, and I think that we'll spend some time maybe individually reaching out to you guys and giving our thoughts. And then as you kind of take each of our ideas and thoughts on it, then kind of come back and we'll reconvene and discuss what the best option is.
Yeah, I think one thing too, potentially like looking at even like reducing the size of it, and I know this is just sort of a sample, but maybe that would save sort of time too in preparing it if it was somehow condensed in a way, and I don't know, that's just the thought.
Yeah, this might be jumping ahead a little bit with the website in mind, but I wonder if this is a good opportunity to really, survey the community, right? When we think about a newsletter, I'm sure everyone has their own ideas and thoughts on what that means and how it looks. Putting a few questions out there really to try to get a sense from people, is this something that's important? How else do they get information on what's going on in the city? We very well could be potentially providing something that maybe is not of much value or interest to people. Just an idea. I don't know if the website allows us to do some kind of polling or.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we could do comments. We could do polls on the website. We could do things like that. I can arrange for that if you guys wanted to move forward with something like that.
Yeah, good idea.
Sounds like pausing this and
Yeah, we'll
moving
come
forward
back.
with the website.
So, are we bringing something back in July then, or are we going to wait a little longer?
I think
for
we
the
wait a little
website?
bit.
Wait
a little bit
We want to see the
longer.
website.
Yeah.
Okay. So then
Focus
we'll
on,
plan
what I've heard is.
Okay. Perfect.
Focus on pretty much the other two things we discussed, the Nextdoor press releases and getting the website, which you're going to find out a little bit, and then maybe the newsletter to follow.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, so then that brings us to the last item here. This actually circles us back around nicely to Councilman Scott's point. Policies, planning, branding, future. What exactly is our policy? What are we saying about it? How are we doing it? Like I said, we do have a draft policy right now. I know it's a little frustrating because I can't, it's not quite ready to really bring forward to you guys. But I'm kind of trying to think based upon the big picture of conversations that we've had previously and based upon stuff that people have said and conversations I've had, some of the things I thought might be important to think about. First of all, that policy, what does our guiding documentation look like? And who is supposed to realistically be kind of handling that guiding documentation and working with it? In my current vision, it is kind of a small enough city that it just sort of falls to the city administrator and myself, excluding police, of course. They have their own Facebook and their own policies and their own things to work on. And anything we put forward would be approved by Chief Sandell before I even dreamed of putting it out or bringing it before you guys. I say that because I know he's going to kill me if I don't. But so that's sort of that first thought. The other things I kind of was thinking about based upon what we had talked about previously was what kind of community support and community resources do we want our communications to provide, which you guys had kind of brought up before, and what kind of branding do we want the city to have? More than once now, I've had a couple of you come up to me and be like, the logo's not very good. And I've had other members of committees do that, and I've had members of the public do that. So I'm not sure right now. I'm kind of developing our branding and our image sort of around that because that's what I've got. But if that was something that we maybe want to change into the future or update or tweak a little bit, there might be room in order to do that. So I kind of was just, like I said, high-level stuff again. Thoughts on any of that? General guidance? If you guys think I'm moving in the right direction or if you think I'm totally off base here, and what stuff you might like to see?
Yeah, I think one thing I had looked at, so Pequot does contests for logo. I mean, they did a contest for their logo. They've done contests for other things. So, thinking of ideas on how to engage the kids of their residents, of Breezy Point, and how we can incorporate that into some of our branding and just get people involved on that side of things.
I don't disagree that, rebranding could be looked at, but I'd definitely call that a back burner item.
Yeah,
and,
no, for sure.
Yeah.
I would agree. We've got a lot
got too
to
much going
accomplish.
on.
We're behind already.
Yeah, that could be like a 5-year plan.
Use what we got, is my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
But we've talked about policies and the
Yeah.
procedure. That should be a forefront, but a rebranding, a logo, a color scheme.
Yeah, put that in the plan for the future.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, we'll make sure that we get the policy stuff worked out and get something at least drafted before you in August so that we can start considering some of these things. Like I said, these are kind of long-term things.
Yep.
Part of it was to just engage you guys so that yeah, we are working on this and it's going to be coming before you with some relative, it's going to be soon. Because I'm kind of getting to that point where I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, yeah, it's time to start really taking comments on it and figuring out where we're going with the material.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. All right. Now we are on to the next Pequot Lakes Fire District Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Chansky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with this item, we are kind of kicking into Budget 2024. I guess this is call this our official kickoff for Budget 2024, even though the budget calendar is really the next item. But the Pequot Lakes Fire District Joint Powers Board has been, since really the impetus of the district talking about capital. Really, when you look back last year, when the councils of the two cities discussed doing the Joint Powers Board and doing a fire district, capital was really the impetus to all of it. Looking at the aging equipment of the fire department and essentially how we're going to pay for it. That really was the impetus of creating the fire district. So the Joint Powers Board has been working on the CIP for a number of months, and in May they kind of finally set a draft CIP that they voted that they wanted the councils to see and have a little bit of reaction to. Not necessarily looking for you to approve, bless yet, but just give some reactions because the Joint Powers Board is going to be moving in June and then July for their 2024 budget to send it to the city councils for formal approval in August. So a little background, if you're not familiar with the capital improvement plan, otherwise known as a CIP, really the intention of a CIP is to take all your significant assets and put them into a plan. Here's the asset, here's what we think the average life of that asset is, and then put it on essentially a calendar of when, based off of when the asset was manufactured and or acquired, to the estimated life of that asset, when should it be replaced, and what is the general cost for that replacement. Take all of your all of those assets, put it on a plan. That plan, you can pick the length of that plan. I've seen 10-year plans, 20-year plans, 30-year plans. And then over that course of that 30 years, you can come up with an aggregate of how much that plan is going to cost to implement. And then the benefit of the CIP is it allows you to then plan the cost of funding that plan over the course of its life. It's not this much this year, this much next year. You might spend a different amount every year, but the idea is having a consistent budgeted amount that over the course of the plan funds the plan. And the benefit of that, you don't see the peak when we come to budgets every year. You don't see the peaks and valleys. It's anticipated. We know it's going to be this much. And then the only changes you generally have on a year-to-year basis are your little operating changes. So that is what this plan really is. For the fire district, they chose a 25-year plan and then put all the different pieces of equipment on it. And then again, each piece of equipment does have a different life expectancy. For example, they placed fire trucks, fire engines at 30 years and tenders at 25 years. There's really a difference, for example, why they chose that. The age of the equipment that we put in there is based off of expected usage as well as industry standards. So how long should a fire engine last? In general, also based off of the usage of it. The Pequot Lakes Fire District equipment is going to have a different lifespan than a piece of equipment for a fire station, a fire department in the Twin Cities that does, 100 calls a week. So we take that into account. And one reason you have so many different years, 30 years for an engine versus 25 years, or 30 years for tenders, or 25 years for tenders, is because, for example, engines, they get to a location, a fire, and then they sit there. They idle, but they sit there. While tenders, they're the ones holding the water, or going back and forth the entire time they're fighting a fire. So that's kind of the idea of why certain things have different ages. So they took that, put in the plan, and in general, what it ends up happening is the 25-year plan, and we have the spreadsheets, comes out to a total of $6,242,169. That's the estimate over 25 years to replace all of the equipment during that time. Fire Chief Schwankel, he did identify, we did ask him, right now the district does cover a number of townships. And we said, well, if the townships left, they can leave it at pretty much any time, any year. Would that affect the equipment? He said one tender. So there's one additional tender that they have that really is the cost of those contract townships because they need that, again, for hauling water. So what he did is he did remove that and say the contract townships would be covering that, and it wouldn't be counted towards what the cities of Pequot Lakes and the city of Breezy Point would be responsible for. So then when you remove that, that breaks it down, lowers it by $400,000 to just over $5.8 million. When you divide that by 25 years, it comes out to $233,686.78 for every single year that needs to go into the plan to fund the plan over 25 years. Again, some years you might have larger, as you can kind of see in the draft plan. Some years you have to order an engine and it's $700,000. Other years you don't order anything. The idea is over the life of the plan, it's funded. The next thing that was done is they took that plan, a little over 5.8 million, and we looked at how do we calculate how we distribute it to the two cities. We also added into it the General Operating and Relief Association contributions, which we'll get to the spreadsheets really just a minute. All three things, the CIP, the General Operating, and the Relief Association, come to what each entity's cost is. How it was determined what each city pays, we looked at it, they discussed it just be 50-50 because there were two entities, or is there some other way? And was determined is to base it off each city's estimated market value as determined by the Crow Wing County assessor. The reason was when they looked at the two cities, while we are very similar in population, we are not necessarily equal in other aspects. And they felt by doing it 50-50, it actually really wasn't necessarily fair to the city of Pequot Lakes, because when you look at kind of a per capita basis, they actually had, their taxpayers actually bore more of a burden because of really where market values and such were versus Breezy Point. So that's where we looked at doing it based off of estimate market value, which is part of the equation to determine how operating is. When it comes to the operating, we also do include call history, but we felt for that really wasn't appropriate for the capital piece. So we base it pretty much solely upon estimated market value. So with that taken into account, the City of Breezy Point's estimated annual cost burden of the proposed CIP is $154,233.27. That is just for CIP, just for capital, not operating, not relief association. I do want to say this number can fluctuate. So again, because it's based off of market values, as market values shift, if the cities come closer together, you know, if Pequot's values go up and Breezy's stay stagnant or go down, Pequot bears more burden. If Pequot drops but Breezy's go up, Breezy bears more burden. So it will fluctuate annually as to that $233,000 who covers it. But based off of the 2022 payable 2023 market values, which is what we have right now, it comes out to $154,233 for the city. When you add in estimated general operating and the estimated fire relief, it comes out to a total of $256,655.82 for 2024. That's the estimate. And that is roughly a 73.4% increase over what we're paying in 2023. So, what we're here today is really to present this to the council and get some initial impact, feedback. Obviously, Mayor Zierden and Councilwoman Ball, they represent the city on the Joint Powers Board, so they also can jump into this. Daniel, if you want to jump really quick to the pricing breakdown spreadsheet. So let's go to that first page right there. That shows only the first 3 years. We go out to 6 years. But this is where, again, you can kind of see it. It was broken down into the three different categories: operating, capital, relief. Even across those first 3 years, 24, 25, 26, what you're seeing is, assuming there's no change in estimated market value differences, that's where you're seeing that the capital might increase year to year based off of different things. I mean, the operating, but the capital stays the same. So once you plug in the capital, the changes year to year tend to be minimal because you're just looking at operating at that point. So at this point, I guess I'll turn it over to your Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Ball, if you have anything else you want to add regarding kind of the process, and then any discussion, questions from the rest of the council on this. Again, the idea is to provide the direction. I know Pequot's having this exact same discussion right now for then the Joint Powers Board, the members, to come back and talk about next Monday.
I would like for you to touch on the 73% jump, right? Because we went from, so people understand, we went from contracting with the city of Pequot as a regular contract, and then to a joint powers, which is what the previous council wanted. So I think it is a little important that we give people a background as to like why those costs have increased and like what benefit we are getting by having a joint powers versus just having a contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. So really the biggest jump, pretty much the sole jump in this cost is really the capital. Right now, what the agreement is when we create the joint powers boards, each city is putting, in addition to covering their portion of the operating and the relief association costs, is $20,000 each towards capital. And then there's a little bit that the townships, so it comes out to like $50,000 a year. $50,000 a year does not fund a fire department from a capital perspective. When you're looking at, if you're to pull up the full CIP and really you have to zoom in, you're looking at a fire engine estimated replacement cost of $700,000, a tender of $400,000. $50,000 a year does not cut it. So that's where we're at right now. And really, again, that is why this district was created, because there wasn't a lot of planning going into the capital. And the Breezy Point City Council at that time, and again, Councilwoman Ball, Councilman Maroney, you were on that part of the discussion, really said we want to be if we're going to be a member of this and be serviced by the department, we want to be ensured that the city of Breezy Point and its interests are being watched out for. And that we're not having these huge spikes year to year, because we saw that equipment was aging. And obviously we're gonna have a little bit of if this is adopted, of a jump this year, but then it kind of flattens out. What we wanted to avoid was huge jump this year, goes back down next year, huge jump the next year, goes back down again, and really consistent budgeting, making sure equipment was being replaced. So I don't know if Councilman Maroney, Councilman Ball, if you have anything to add as to what the council's thoughts were a year ago.
In short, we were underpaying. The capital outlay for improvement was misbudgeted, essentially. And
There
that's
wasn't really one.
yeah, there
No,
really
there
wasn't one. And we recognize that, and that's why the council moved forward with trying to become one entity to be able to have that say in making sure that we're budgeting appropriately, versus seeing a large ticket item come across saying now we need to pay for it. And so this is what it's doing, is it's catching up. One of my questions that I would have is this playing catch up, or are we set with that number? Are we going to see an item that comes up that, yes, it's a 25-year plan, but is there something due within the next 7 years that, looking at those line items, we're good with where this is at because of the length of time?
Correct. Yep. So nice thing about a CIP is the items in itself can shift, as long as if you move like one truck, like for example, one of the things that the fire district, the board has talked about, is that I believe it's the 2003 engine and the 1995 engine. If it's up to Fire Chief Schwankel, he's recommending the 2003 engine be replaced before the 1995. The reason being the 1995 is in good general running condition. It's a backup. The 2003 is actually the one that's stationed here at the Public Safety Building, and is a maintenance nightmare. So we can move those around as long as you move proportionally. So you can't necessarily be shifting everything to the top, to the front of it. But if you move one engine up, as long as something proportionally gets moved back, you're good. To your question, again, with this plan, this doesn't mean we won't have to, the district won't necessarily have to bond for things. Like, these first year payments, we're obviously not going to have enough money that first year to pay cash for everything. But we'll have to be able to bond less, and we'll be able to make those bond payments. And over the course of the 25 years, everything gets paid for. So again, early on, you may have to bond for certain items, but over the long haul, everything's getting paid for.
So is the city of Pequot Lakes the fiscal agent for the Joint Powers Board then?
It is currently the fiscal agent. Per the agreement, the Joint Powers Agreement, it said the city of Pequot Lakes would be the fiscal agent for the first 2 years, and then we would be alternating. The Joint Powers Board actually did look at trying to find a third-party entity, could find 0 takers. No one was interested in being a third party to this district. And what we're discussing is, one, the agreement says that Breezy Point will take it over. We're kind of developing, the agreement says we can pretty much charge for that service. So right now, Jeanette and I are working on what would that proposal look like. And then potentially, if we switch and it goes well, looking at maybe Breezy just taking over permanently. Because the issue with bobbing back and forth is transferring files, who's doing it, different softwares, audit issues. So right now, Pequot is the fiscal agent, but we're looking at 2024 being the city of Breezy Point.
And I will add to that too, our new finance specialist has experience with this exact thing. So if we were to turn it over to Breezy to handle, not only would we obviously get paid to do that, but we have someone here who has experience in this area, which will help greatly and reduce costs in the long run.
And obviously, those decisions have to be approved by the two city councils. So with everything, like regarding this, if it involves one or both of the cities, how the agreement goes, it has to go to both councils to approve before the Joint Powers Board can implement.
Anyone else have any questions on this?
Not at this time, no.
And I did, again, this is very, very early, but I did want to tell you I did do the math. So regarding budget, obviously we're going to be talking about budget next, but I just want to put the kind of in, just so you're understanding, if the levy for 2024 did not change from 2023 with the exception of this, so if we had the exact same levy but we just added this, it would be a 4.5% levy increase. So just to put that into kind of what that impact is. Obviously, once it's there, again, the nice thing is any additions after that will hopefully be, again, as we're kind of showing with this cost layout, is minimal year to year after that. And then again, we're here when it comes to the actual budget. Again, how the joint powers agreement is worded, both city councils have to approve the budget after it has been prepared by the Joint Powers Board, which they'll be doing and hopefully approving in July. And if either city council doesn't approve the budget, it's an automatic joint council meeting to work through it. So this is not the last time you will be seeing this thing. So we just wanted to get some initial comments.
From us tonight on this?
We aren't looking at anything specific. We just wanted to get, again, this in front of you.
Right.
And if you had any initial comments, we wanted to hear those so we can pass those along to the Joint Powers Board.
Anything we want to pass along?
And just as a reminder, like our next meeting would be
Next
next Tuesday.
A week from today.
Or
Monday.
next Monday, sorry, next Monday. What day is it? Next Monday. Not that we wouldn't be discussing it more after that, but just
Yep.
not that we have to have all the comments today.
Yes.
All right. I guess no other comments. We can move on to the budget calendar for 2024.
Excellent. So this is really our I would say, the true kickoff for at least the City of Breezy Point budget. So how I like to kick off the budget is to present a budget calendar. And so the council knows kind of what the plan is and then get you to essentially bless that plan as good for moving forward. So with the budget, we kind of look at something almost every month till the end of the year. It starts this month, kind of after this meeting. It starts with department heads working with myself and finance specialist Rust on their operating budgets, also on their capital requests. So the department heads will submit any capital requests that they have to us, and then we will also work at drafting the first draft of the 2024 operating budgets. Once those have been put together, kind of goes into July, where we like to do a budget kickoff workshop with the council. This first one, how we see it is kind of a whole, a high level. Okay, we're not getting into the nitty gritty about every single line item, but maybe those big items. So I kind of talked about in my memo, the budget kickoff centered around discussion of overall budget goals and expectations, initial project operating budget changes. So if we have anything significant, we touch on capital requests from the departments, and then potential significant projects. That's going to be probably a big chunk of our discussion will be those significant projects, those things that might have big ticket items, such as City Hall, Bushman Road, ordinances, things we've kind of already, you've alluded to before you might want to discuss. So that's really what the budget kickoff is for. Once we've had that discussion, that gives us more guidance on those bigger items, on what we should focus on. And that will then leads into August when we have our true preliminary budget workshop. That's when we've taken everything from operating, department heads, what we heard from council, and we bring it back to you and say, here's the very first draft of the budget. This is what we're looking at. Again, looking at line items, yes. We'll talk, a lot of times we discuss the big changes and what we're looking at for preliminary levy. During that meeting, that's when we say, okay, are there any big comments you have? And then we make changes per your direction. And then that leads into the September meeting. That's where you adopt the preliminary budget and levy. You hold the public hearing and you adopt it. Per state statute, every municipality must approve, every city must approve their budget, their preliminary levy and budget by September 30th, and submit it to the county auditor. Once that is done, again, you hold a public hearing, there's noticing of that. You then can still work on that budget and levy on October, November, before it's approved. I think it's by mid-December. Your final budget and levy can be lower than your preliminary, it just can't be higher. So the importance of that preliminary is not, I'm saying just throw everything you want in there, but you do want to look at, okay, here are the big items. We might shift it, but here's the preliminary. We're going to get public input. Maybe there's some things we're going to discuss more. We need more info on, and then you always can remove things and lower it if you want. The deal is you just can't add. If you want to add a different project into that preliminary, you can. You just got to figure out, you just got to make sure that the levy doesn't go up from what you adopted. So that's kind of the plan. The idea would be October, November to finalize that. I'll be honest, my goal is to have that final budget pretty much completed by the end of October, as I will be out of the office most of the month of November on paternity leave. So my goal is to get it done by the beginning of October, by the end of October. And then in December, again, you hold your final budget levy hearing and you adopt your budget. So that's what we're looking at. In between all this is a lot of staff work. We've already kind of done a little bit of communication with the Personnel and Finance Committee, just working on getting some of those meetings rescheduled. There'll be some items that probably are incorporated into the budget that will have meetings specifically with them prior to coming to the full council to get some clarification on. So there'll be some meetings kind of in there. What I would like to do for the council today is I would love to get these workshops essentially set. You see you got one of every month. Just so you're aware, the methodology of this, there was kind of a thought process. Each of those meetings, July 8th, August 15th, October 17th, those are the third Tuesday of the month. And the only reason I did 1 p.m. is because I was looking at the history we've had of the last special meetings and workshops we've done. All have been during the day around 1 o'clock. Doesn't mean they have to be. That's just why I put those in there. Again, as kind of some comments we have heard tonight. If you prefer them to be evening meetings, they can be evening meetings. But that's just kind of based off of what we've seen from the council. That's what we saw, that Tuesdays, there seemed to be some thinking of that Tuesdays kind of worked, and we've always done day meetings. Doesn't have to be. So the idea, again, would be kind of that third week. The idea about third week is that first week and second week of the month, we've got a lot of committee meetings, so let's not throw something on top of those. So.
They work for me.
I guess I'll defer to the rest of the council. My schedule's a little bit more flexible, so whatever works for my peers is fine by me.
I think my only discussion is there sort of a time limit as far as how long we're going to say these workshops are? Because I would sort of appreciate that just for setting expectations.
And then I would say from you, if you say, I'll give you 90 minutes, then I'll make it happen in 90 minutes. If you give me 2 hours, it'll be 2 hours. It's kind of, I take that from you as how much time do you have? If you say, well, if it's during the day, I only get an hour, but if you do it at night, I'll give you 2.5, well, then I might lean more towards the evening just so we can have thorough discussion. A lot of it depends, I'll be honest, a lot of it depends on you.
Councilman Scott?
I guess I would prefer something not be longer than 2 hours if it's during the day.
Yeah.
I would agree, though. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, Councilman Scott?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I would prefer more of an evening time. I know I'm not going to be available as it's currently scheduled for July 18th. To the extent that that makes a difference.
Can I ask, is it just that day or is it that week?
It's most of the month of July.
Most of the month of July?
Yeah.
As a standard for me, looking at the third week, third Tuesday of the month, knowing well in advance, I can schedule myself available, especially if it's being limited to 2 hours. I can definitely accommodate that, knowing well in advance if that's just like a pre-scheduled, but maybe changeable.
They're always changeable. My idea about kind of setting it now was one, then you all can just put it on your calendars and it's in there. And also the public, we can again be advertising to the public of, hey, this is the process. We always talk about people, we don't know how the budget was approved or what was the discussions, and people know this is when the council is discussing the budget. So people know in advance, we're having workshop on this day, the public hearing on the preliminaries this day, there might be another workshop October, and then finals in December.
Almost sounds like it's the makings of a press release.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if we said, okay, the third Tuesday of the month, moving forward at 1 o'clock, going forward, I would like to see if we could accommodate, that preliminary, if we need to change that.
At kickoff?
That kickoff one. Are you gone, or just during the day?
Yeah, I'm out of state traveling.
Okay.
That's what I was looking at to see when I'm.
Could you phone
Back.
in? Potentially?
That's not as easy.
Huh?
I was just going to say that's not as easy.
You can
Well, if
phone
he's
in.
gone, then.
Yeah. We can make it work, but it's,
And honestly, I'd have to see on my end what's going on and what I'm doing, sort of a thing too. So it's not to say it's not possible
if we
to
moved
connect remotely.
up, so this initial one, again, is more high level. Would it be helpful if we moved it up to like
End of June.
the end, like the last week in June, or even that first week in July? Or again, we could also push it back to late July, early August. I would just request that we give us at least kind of a 2-week buffer between the two workshops, just so we can take and implement.
Do you want to give Administrator Chansky a couple of days, and then why don't you then email all of us the availability that he has for the end of June, early July, or if it has to be late or early August, give us a couple days that we can choose from, and then we'll do it that way. Does that work?
That would work.
See if it works out.
Yeah.
So then I guess if there's no other comments on the calendar, I guess what I would appreciate would be a motion to adopt the calendar, maybe with that one exception of the date for the budget kickoff to be determined.
Well, I'll make that said motion that we start planning our workshops as scheduled out third Tuesday of the month, with the exception that July 18th may be moved.
Yeah, a second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. F.
So speaking of meetings, the July meeting is currently scheduled for July 3rd, obviously the day before Independence Day. And obviously a lot of things happen on the day before Independence Day. And so there really comes the question of, do you want to be here at 6:30 on July 3rd? Or would you like to consider an alternate date? Generally, our policy is that if the council meeting lands on a holiday, it's automatically, our policy is that if a council meeting lands on a holiday, it's automatically moved to the next day. So if it's Monday, it follows Tuesday, like we do on Labor Day. I originally had in here a recommendation, maybe we should look at moving it to Wednesday. However, our auditors must provide the final audit report, and they like it to have you accepted that report prior to submitting the final audit report to the state auditor. Technically, they have to submit that by June 30th. However, they communicate with the state auditor. Auditor is very flexible, that they understand that sometimes the way that audits fall, someone's got to be the late audit, and they might not get their presentation beginning July, as long as they know it's done. So the auditors, unfortunately, are at another municipality on July 5, making that city's audit presentation. So they're not available for the 5th. So my recommendation would be then the 6th. They have kind of preliminary penciled us in for the 6th, if you want to move that meeting from July 3rd. So what we're really kind of here is, do you want to move it from July 3rd? And if you do, our recommendation would be July 6th.
I know I will not be in attendance. I have previous commitments. I'll be out of town.
Okay.
And I,
Here, just the, okay.
You won't be either?
No, I'm just asking if it was the whole week
Okay,
or if it was just
the
a
whole-
specific
I,
day.
it works for me to move it, but
Yeah, same.
July 6th would work for me.
And again, I'm out of state.
You're out of
Oh, yeah,
state the
you're
whole
out
month,
of
that's right.
So,
We'll have a
You guys are
minimum
gonna
for
have
a
to-
quorum. We can keep the agenda light in respective for that. Again, it's just something that the auditors need to kind of submit that. So if you wanted to stay at maybe the 3rd, we could, but
yeah. Why don't we do the 6th? I mean, I think that is fair. It's a 4-day weekend, and
yeah, I mean,
Makes
the third,
sense.
I would.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And then it might make it easier for members of the city to attend too if they
yeah,
wanted
they
to.
might, yeah, exactly.
and then again, we would obviously notice the change
Okay.
per usual. So, and then again, we'd be the 6th and at the same time at 6:30. So we keep the time the same.
Yep. You want that as a motion?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to move the regular scheduled July 3rd meeting at 6:30 to Thursday, July 6th at 6:30 PM. I make that motion.
Second? 1 second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, last item on the new business, bylaws and code of conduct.
Yes, so this is something kind of coming out of, the retreat, and then also as things we've been listening and hearing from members of the council, members of the public, members of the committee members, is really where do these things come from? Where do our processes for how agenda is and how meetings are run and what is the role of citizens? And this is kind of where what most cities do is they either have bylaws, code of conduct, rules of decorum. There's a lot of different words. That's how they determine that. Here's how it's a formal thing. They apply for this council. They apply it to committees and say this is how you function. This is how meetings get run. This is the role of the mayor / the chair. This is how this is the role of the public. And so we do feel as staff it would actually alleviate a lot of questions, a lot of, well, how did we get here? And so what we'd like to do, again, is kind of have it as a start out, as a kickoff for a workshop, for us to draft some, bring you some examples and maybe a draft, and have you kind of discuss it. If you are interested in looking at having code of conduct, bylaws, rules of decorum, whatever you want to call them. Ideally, we kind of threw out there maybe having one this month. We threw out there, I did throw out next week. I know that's kind of a short notice. We could do next Tuesday, kind of to 1 o'clock we discussed. We're already going to be here Wednesday, so if you wanted to do it, if you're available and wanted to do it Wednesday after the open house, we could do that. We could do another day. The week of the 19th, I will just be out of the office. We are closed for Juneteenth and the 19th. And then I'll be participating in the League of Minnesota Cities Conference that week. So the week of the 19th doesn't work. Week of the 26th could work, or we can push it if you don't think it's a huge priority. So just wanted to have that discussion.
June 14th, in conjunction with the workshop again being,
The open house, yes, the open house would be from 5 to 7 for City Hall, and then we just say at 7, we're convening the council workshop.
I will be out of state those days.
You'll be out of state
The 14th,
the
yeah.
week of that week, okay.
I'm not available the 14th either.
Okay. Any availability that anyone knows, or unavailability that you know of the week of the 26th?
I'm available the week of the 26th.
I'm out of state from the 28th.
starting the 28th, or until the 28th?
Starting the 28th.
20th, starting 28th, so it would be the 26th or the 27th,
26th preferably, but
which is a Monday.
I'm not here in the afternoon on the 26th.
Are you available in the evening?
I would be
Okay.
in the evening.
Evening of the 26th?
that works for me. What time?
Again, time,
6 o'clock?
no, but I mean, as far as just a 2 hour,
I think this is maybe,
1 hour?
we'll send, we'll begin drafting these and we'll send them out obviously beforehand so you have time to read it. I'm thinking maybe an hour, 90 minutes absolutely max.
6:30? 7? What?
Whichever works for you. We do 6,
I don't mean,
6:37?
I could, yeah.
I'm open all day
Could do-
on Monday.
I could do 5, or, I mean,
I'd rather almost do 5 and,
or
5
like-
is fine, 6 or,
but again, it's dependent on, everyone else's schedules.
5 o'clock, Monday the 26th? No, 6?
6?
6:30 would be,
6:30 would be better.
6:30 is best, but
That's fine.
That works.
That'll work.
All
So
Minnesota nice trying to work with.
June 26th at 6:30. If I could get a motion to that, that'd be great.
Make a motion
who
for,
agreed to do all these workshops anyway?
I'll make a motion for a workshop on Monday, June 26th at 6:30 PM.
Second, anyone?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can you please send
Okay.
out calendar invites for?
Absolutely, and we'll be getting it all out for the public as well.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right, to old business. Health insurance broker.
Yep, so this is just, back in April, we requested permission to go out for RFP for health insurance broker. We did that, we got 5 responses after reviewing that. We are recommending we actually stay with our current broker, which is the AET Group. And their proposal has been attached. And then as we put it in the RFP, it would be for 3 years, it would be the initial agreement for benefit years 24, 25, and 26. Again, there is no direct cost, as we are a small group under the ACA, there's no direct cost to the city. It's just all the costs are essentially incorporated automatically into premiums. So the broker gets paid through our premiums. So there's no, like, we pay them an X amount on top of our premiums. It's just, they get a certain percentage of the premiums and it's fixed. So that's what we're just recommending, is we're just looking for the council to accept the proposal from the AT Group to be our health insurance broker for 24, 25, and 26.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, updates.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of updates, and I will let Daniel start off. I think the one that's probably the most anticipated, which is an update on the city website.
Yes.
where's the drum roll?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you guys know, we've been working on developing the new city website in the background since, November of last year, I think, is when we executed the contract with Civic Plus. We really got probably the full workload in January, where we started doing stuff. So the website is, I'd say at this point, it's like 99% there. There's a couple things I need to tweak in it. A lot of the errors and things that are left now are honestly things that I'm just not going to spot unless we get other people looking at it. So I'm kind of at that point now where it's like, well, we're basically at launch. There's some things that are still going to be developing in the background and working on and going through as we go. I'll get to showing you guys the website in a second. Just before we went into actually showing that, I just wanted to point out, as a result of this project kind of coming to a close here, eventually we're going to have a conversation with OnSystems about changing out our emails from the .mn.us format that we have now to be more standardized to breezypointmn.gov, which is what our new website is. We're kind of planning right now doing that late summer, early fall 2023 this year. That's not necessarily set in stone. There's some manipulation around there. If you guys didn't feel comfortable doing it yet or doing other things, that was kind of what our plan was, and I'm comfy with that. But depending upon what OnSystem says as well, there may be some tweaking that happens as a result of that. So just be aware of that as we move forward here. That is an item that's coming up soon. We'll keep you updated on the status of that as we go forward. In the meantime, though, the website is currently active. So I can give you guys a quick tour and show you what we're looking at here. So this is kind of what the new website looks like. This is a bit shrunk down a touch because we're on a tablet over here, but I can run you guys through it quick and show you where everything is and show you all the bells and whistles. So front page, you've got your City of Breezy Point logo here. This is what we're doing here. You'll notice this is the same thing that's actually on the press releases now as well. It was easy branding to lift, and I figured it would be nice to at least get a little bit of coordination going with what we've got going on there. We've got Facebook up here, goes to Facebook, YouTube, goes to YouTube, obviously. Contact us page has information all over the place for everything. As you navigate down, you'll see, community, all kinds of drop downs, agendas and minutes, city news. This is the site I was talking about earlier where we're going to be hosting all of our city news. My intention right now is, it's got public notice, press releases, articles, announcements. I'm going to start replicating pretty much everything that's get posted on social media that I send out that goes through on this page. So if people ever are like, oh, I wonder what the City of Breezy Point is up to right now, it's this page right here. And I'm going to put just about everything that comes out of my office on it. Unless it's a memo or something, obviously, for you guys or for a packet material or something like that. But you've got, community, you've got stuff in there. You've got departments, all the various departments and the way things are. This is the one you guys were talking about earlier. City projects. So we're still working on it a little bit, but I do have a city projects page up and running. This is a dedicated area where we're going to be putting those things and where we're going to be storing them from now on. Individual pages for individual projects. I'm going to load all the information, all the documentation, that stuff in there. If you click these drop downs, just to give you an example, you've got, I don't care about that. You've got completed projects here that are just left up. This is just an example page of like what a completed project might look like. This is the old cooperative community enhancement project. So just to kind of show you, you've got documentation on the study and the RFP. You've got quick synopsis of the event here, little image that I lifted off the site, stuff like that. Under current projects, this is the tentative web page. It is still very much under construction for the Bushman Roadway expansion project. I had to clean up the language and organize it out and everything, but just to give you an example of kind of what a current project website might look like, you've got, contact information over here. Right now, the email in that contact group, I'm the only email there. So if somebody were to click that and fill out a form on the website, which they can absolutely do, they would fill this out, their email address, name, subject, this, it would just get sent to me. Because I'm the only live contact in that group right now. That can be modified and changed any time. I have control over everything on this website. I can do literally whatever I want with it, and no one can stop me. So, that being said, just
I can.
Nobody can say that.
He can.
There's one person.
But so just the way it's kind of designed is that's kind of how it is. You get supporting documents here, and then for the future, especially as we move into the city hall design stuff and we do things out here, this is where people are going to fill out information for actually submitting comments and questions to us for, city hall, for other such things. Now, this won't be active on this page forever because Bushman Roadway has its own project website that WSB is managing. That's a different thing, which we'll get to shortly. So this won't be active forever. I just turned it on for now so you guys could see this is what it looks like.
I actually had an idea. So if you're going to have something where people can ask questions to you, if they're asking a question, they're probably not the only resident with that question. It might be helpful with either their permission or you can anonymously post their question and your answer on our social media. So basically it's like, hey, we had a resident that had this question. This is the answer to that question, just so you guys all know.
So FAQs.
Yes.
Frequently asked questions.
And we actually, so there actually is a specific format for FAQ formatting on the website.
Perfect.
So I can actually, if I were to log in, I can actually like check a box that says FAQs and I can organize it out and put it on the site and make
Perfect.
it look good and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I've got pretty much total control over this website. Civic Plus has just kind of handed me the keys to the kingdom and going, okay, it's up to you guys now. So that's kind of how that section of the website looks. If we drill down a little bit more here into like an individual department, you'll notice these are all things that are replicated from our current website. They're just brought over. Some of them I still are kind of want to clean up a little bit, but we'll go through as we go and kind of organize them out a touch, and I'll pretty things up as we're moving along. That's going to take some time.
The question, so like for the, Conservation Club or Breezy Point Area Women's Club, are they going to be able to post things on their, or is it going to their link and their website?
It should be going to their website. Like if
Okay.
we go to like the Area Women's Club, this should go directly.
Yeah, we're not
Oh,
hosting
this just
other
goes, yeah,
people's
this goes
Okay.
to their
Okay,
Facebook.
you're just providing the links for those.
It's just a link that goes to their website. We let them handle it. We're not actually posting any of their
Okay.
information or data on our end.
Perfect.
But yeah, so if we drill down, cemetery, you'll see this is all content that was replicated from our previous website, has pictures and stuff in it. It's got information on the butterfly release, and it's a little troll right now. This is actually what we had for the butterfly release on the website. Some of this stuff is going to need to be built out a little bit more, as I said, because some of the stuff we had on the website was kind of multi-links that drilled down, and it was like multiple pages, and then there was like one sentence at the end of the chain. So we're going to expand some of those out, kind of pretty them up as we go through. But all the content from the old website is there. And it's all the departments all organized out and all the information there, all the stuff in businesses. This is our new bids and RFP modules. Obviously, there's nothing in it right now. But, we've got like Bushman Roadway RFP, design engineering bid in here. That's all organized out. It's closed. So all that stuff is live. It's all in there. It's all good to go. Moving back to the front page so that you guys can see it. As we scroll down, and this picture will probably change because it's Breezy Point Airport picture. I was just using it for mock-up on the website while we start. As we scroll down, though, you'll see our front-end widgets. This is what we have right now in our front end. Job opportunities, public safety just goes directly to Chief Sandel's page and the PD's page on the website so that people can get to it quickly if they need it. Pay My Sewer Bill takes you to the standard Pay My Sewer Bill page that we have right now. That I'll probably manipulate around a little bit if I want it to be a direct link. And what you'll see here as well is, permits, absence forms is the same thing we have on the website right now, just organized out a little bit better. But the other module here that's kind of important is minutes and agendas. So there's nothing in upcoming meetings right now just because we haven't gone live with the system yet. Obviously, we are using it because we're producing your guys' agendas on it. But it's not linked quite yet because we're doing it. But if you go into recent meetings, this is where you'll see all of the meetings and the agendas attached to them and everything that's going on. Like I click on this one here, open this up, boom, loads the entire agenda. It's all just loaded right into there, does the stuff. As we get minutes, same thing. You click that link, you open it up, boom, opens up the minutes. And as we scroll down here, this is a cool thing here. These are kind of older because of the way we had them loaded. They got a little funky, but like the goal is eventually you'll just click on that right to the YouTube page with the video for the meeting.
City Council on Tuesday,
So
January
everything
3rd, 2023.
organizes out right there. It's nice and clean. It's easy to read through. You can view individual details on the items if you want. You can do basically anything you want with it. All that information is going to be stored on this page in that one place. Upcoming meetings will have all the information for obviously upcoming ones. This is going to be a historical record. Now, for right now, this record only goes back for 3 years. The reason it only goes back for 3 years is because Civic Plus was going to charge us a lot of extra money if I told them to do more than 3 years. So we were kind of like, okay, well, let's have them do the 3 years for starters, and then, we can kind of port things as we go or load the agendas ourselves later on if we want to push back even farther, if that's necessary. If that's not necessary, we cannot do it. we were going to kind of leave that to a decision to you guys to see if you wanted us to just chunk away at that slowly, or if you wanted to say, well, if it's older than 3 years, they can submit a public records request. We can just provide it to them. Obviously, our YouTube stays the same. So all the videos that go all the way back are all still up there. So if somebody really wanted to see the meeting, all they got to do is go to the YouTube and check it back. As we move even further down the front page here, on a larger screen, these two things would actually be like right next to each other, so they'd be a side by side. But as you can see, as you scroll down, you'll get a news recap that's on the front page. It'll always have the first 3 most recent news stories posted out. And then under that, we have the calendar and the current 3 upcoming events. So obviously this stuff, again, all needs to be caught up and cleaned up a little bit. But like if I hit like view full calendar here, there it goes. It pulls up the calendar, and it has all the dates and everything and all those things. Each of these events have individual pages that we can modify. I can post pictures to. We can do whatever we want with them, and they're all organized out. As we move down to the bottom here, this is just the bottom header. Has the City Hall office hours, location, disclaimer for the website that was from the old website, advertisement for Civic Plus, and then just a staff login. So that's kind of the state of the website right now. The search menu obviously works. If you were to type in something you were looking for, it would pull up pages that it thought were familiar, or if you're looking for a specific term, if you want a certain permit or something, you can type it into the search bar, hit search, and it goes through and it works and everything. There's a couple tiny glitches left that I'm kind of working through, but as it stands, it's basically good to go. Any additional errors that are located at this point, I would just ask as people start to use the website, tell us about them, and I'll go in and try to fix it as soon as I can and repair it up. So this website is going to be breezypointmn.gov. We aren't getting rid of our current website just yet. The website's going to go away in the sense that it's no longer going to be hosted by GovOffice. But we're still going to have the old domain. So Civic Plus, as a part of our contract agreement, took over our old domain, and they're going to be operating that old domain as a forward to our new website until about the end of this year, maybe a little bit longer, depending upon how long it takes. So if people look for the old website, at least for a little while, it's going to forward them from the old website to the new website. And that'll continue for really as long as we're willing to pay for it, to be frank. Civic Plus will always maintain the service if we're willing to give them, a couple $100 a year. So if we wanted to maintain that longer than like the end of this year, we could. We'll leave it up to you guys if you think there's a need for that. Obviously, as we go into starting up the website, we're going to advertise it and talk about it, do press release, that kind of stuff to kind of get the word out and do things. Currently, we plan to launch this website on June 12th. Is kind of when we'd like to go live with it, assuming that you guys are okay with it and that everything looks okay and you're not going to tell me to change something immediately or that there's something like terribly wrong with it. Main reason for that is it gives us some time. It'll give us this next week to finalize it, get it done, load it up, make any adjustments, and then it'll be good to go. And we can start taking comments on like the City Hall stuff and start really trying to use it to organize it out.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And the biggest thing I think Daniel really didn't point out yet, and that's mainly because it's not live yet, is one of the biggest benefits of this is once we get it all live and really going, that's when we'll be able to open the section of it where people can sign up to receive notifications. Like anytime an agenda gets posted, they'll get a notification, things like that.
Yeah, that's not active yet because there's no database to store any of the data. So what's going to happen in my current plan is once it does go live, I'm going to have the database in the background, and then there will be like a pop-up, or under the Contact Us section, there will be a place you can sign up. And then when you come to the website for the first time, it's going to check to make sure you haven't been here before on your cache, and there's going to be a pop-up that's like, hey, sign up for alerts from the city of Breezy Point. Type in your name and your email, and then it'll go through and do that. There's also some text alert functions as well that'll be kind of in that same vein. So I have to cross out those details a little bit once we get the website live because there's some stuff that needs to happen there first, but that'll be coming as quickly as I can possibly get it out once we actually get the product going.
Okay, perfect.
So those alerts that people can sign up for, are those going to be pretty general in a sense, or can someone like make a specific request to be notified of only special council meetings?
So I don't know about only special, but like, for example, when it comes to the type of meeting, so in the agenda side of the software, we have 5 different types of meetings. Council, Planning Commission, Council, Planning Commission, Parks and Recreation, and the 2 council committees. So they can sign up for either of those 5. And anytime we publish, so say they sign up for council, okay? Council, any type of council meeting, be a regular meeting, a special meeting, or even a workshop, if we publish an agenda for it, the second we hit publish, it sends out a notification to them that, hey, the City of Breezy Point just published a city council agenda. So they can't go specifically only to special meetings, but they can go to council. And if they aren't interested in Parks and Rec, they don't have to sign up for Parks and Rec.
Okay. All right, do we need a motion to approve this at all?
I don't think so. I think we're just looking at if there was any comments. Otherwise, our plan is a week from today to go live.
Perfect.
Good, nice work.
Awesome.
All right, next update.
So next update, a little bit of on Bushman Road. I'm gonna let Daniel go into the website a little bit in just a second. We did present you the website last month when Paul Sandy was here. It is just now live. Again, that one was a pre-one. They had to update it with the addition of Ideal Township. So now it is live. And when we go live with the new website, we'll also have all of that there as well. I just wanted to also point you out, Paul had to run, but he does have in your packet, there is a full written report, kind of what they're doing on what they've been up to. They also did submit to us their full geotechnical report today. That's a good old 50 pages of soil borings. But that doesn't include, we'll get that out also. We just got it today. It does include in there, one of the biggest findings is they used that geotechnical to look at what kind of pavement depths we should be looking at. So that's one of the biggest things coming out of that geotechnical. So again, Paul's report's there. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll get those off to Paul. Then with that, Daniel, if you just want to, I know you've seen it once before, we'll just do a quick run through the Bushman website once more. Again, it is now live. And Daniel, I think you did post about this last week? Bushman site?
Not yet.
Not yet,
So
okay.
we were planning on June 7th was going to be our go live date for this. We were going to do social media advertising and whatnot shortly, and then next week when we get the website up and live, we'll get all that information loaded. So yeah, so this is the project website. As it stands right now, it is pretty simple, which is actually good because that's kind of what we wanted. WSB did throw this together and make sure that everything was working out and set up properly. So as we scroll through here, you'll see your basic information on what the project is, why it's there, why we're doing it. You go through, you hit next page. We're trying to kind of get people to go through in order so that they can read it if they need to. Various project need, information on it, past information, stuff that they've been developing, map of the area so that everybody knows it. Same thing, timeline, estimated timeline. Now this page is a little bit subject to change based upon what's going on there, so that they'll update it as they go through. This is the part where the fun starts, essentially. So WSB has made a community input map, essentially, that is now live and it is active. Like I said, we haven't actually put it out there quite yet, but we're going to shortly. It's nice because it'll show you, like I said, project depth, width, the area, everything that's going on, kind of what you're looking at. You can add comments that will allow you to specifically pin locations that are on the map. So somebody, has a problem with this section right here, they can, hit add a comment. You can go in here, fill out their details, do their phone number, email address, all the stuff. They can choose to make it public or not public if they want as well, if they so choose. They can set a location and they can stick a pin right on the map like it says, click to add a point. And they can put it right there and they can say in the comments, loaded out exactly what it is and what they want to say and all those various things. They hit report it and they fill it out, and it'll work good. We've already tested it and everything, and it's ready to go. So that's the cool part. That's the part they get to people get to interact with and kind of work with more directly based upon what they want to do. Once they've done that, if they have any comments that are not specific to the map, or they're confused about something else, or they're not sure, they hit next page. This page here is just a standard feedback page that they have for WSB there. It's got a 1,000-word limit. This will report out to the people at WSB with whatever comment this is, or if they want to reiterate or give more specific information on the comment, stuff like that. This will go out. Paul Sandy will see it. They can put it in the pile with all the other comments they've got, and then the final page is just contact information if they want more information, to call Paul Sandy or email him so that he can help answer their questions. And then I guess if they want to do it again, they can hit start over.
All right, sounds pretty good. Should we move on to the last one?
So last one is pretty short, and I got actually one other thing beyond that. So again, we're not going to really dive into it too much. I just asked Chief Sendell to put together kind of an update for the council on the hiring. Again, after Nate Peters departed in March, we began the search. So Chief Sendell's kind of updated in there. In short, the search continues. And unfortunately, what we've been finding, as everyone knows, law enforcement, just like almost every field, is highly competitive right now. And we've had a couple candidates that we were hoping that might be good, and we've lost at least two. We've lost at least two to other departments. So the search does continue on that. The one other thing that I don't have in the packet, I just want to identify, actually I originally had an item in the packet, would be for a legislative update. There is so much that came out of this legislative session. There was no time to really digest it. Daniel and I had the opportunity to actually go to Sourcewell last week, a group of administrators that they're putting together, meeting quarterly, and we had a legislative update from one of their legislative specialists. There is so much in that to digest, and still so many questions. There's a lot of that came out of that legislative session that we're going to be discussing. You know, cannabis. We're going to be bringing forward some discussion some of how the council wants to move forward with looking at, we are going to have some discussion on licensing. The legislature has some requirements on licensing. We're going to have to discuss on how far you want to go with that. You have to do it, but it does say we can have some control. So we're going to have discussions on that. Impacts into the future from, like, for example, the paid family and medical leave that came out of there, what that's going to be looking like for the city of Breezy Point. The city, immediate impact to the city, as part of one of the public safety bills, the city should be getting a payment of about $116,000 towards public safety in 2024, which will be really nice. We'll talk about that as part of the budget as well. So we'll be discussing a lot more of the legislative update in the future. There's a lot to digest right now, and we had questions of the legislative specialists, the people, really an attorney that focuses on this stuff, and there's a lot of questions they didn't even know, as we peppered them with questions. So lots more to come from this legislative session, and as they rightfully point out, the session is not actually over; it's just in recess. So there's even more to come. Starting again in the fall. So all to say, more to come on that. Pretty much the most active legislative session we've seen in probably over a decade. So, and that is all I have, Madam Mayor.
All right. Anyone have anything to report? No?
No.
Everyone ready to go home?
Yeah.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
There's a fight. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.